Good evening and welcome to our regular council meeting Monday, February 28th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. And the first item of business under 1.1, conflict of interest declaration, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Is there any in the room this evening? I see none. Thank you. Moving on to acceptance of the agenda, item 2.1. Are there any additions to the agenda? You might be seeing me skip around a couple of items tonight to look after a couple of administrative time conflicts, so I'm going to jump around a little bit moving forward. So with seeing no additions to the agenda, could I get someone to make a motion to accept the agenda as circulated? Councillor Beekman, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 3.1, adoption of the previous minutes from our general council meeting of February 14th, 2022. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Motion 42-2022 is talking about the motion to adopt the regular council meeting agenda for as amended. Do we need to include the amendment in there, maybe through to our recording secretary? The wording of the amendment?
Sorry. Yes, in response to your question, it is not needed to be in the actual motion of what the amendment is. It is a live recording, like saved in our library, and it would have been live streamed at the time, but it's not, doesn't need to be noted of what the amendment was.
Okay, Councillor Chapman makes a motion to adopt the minutes from February 14th as circulated. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. Item 4.1. The council meeting location, and we're going to speak on request that council provide direction to administration on council meeting location moving forward now that the restriction exemption program, the REP, has been lifted by the government of Alberta as of tomorrow. Our CAO, Kalen, is going to discuss that.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. I've had a couple practice rounds with this staff report. As the mayor nicely summarized, staff would like direction from council on where the future meeting location should be for chambers. The two categorical options that we've discussed in the past is maintaining chambers in the makeshift hub meeting room here, or transitioning back to the council chambers at the main town office on Main Street. The main town office at Main Street, it is equipped for live stream and is also more conducive for members of the public to attend, given that there is a dedicated gallery area with their own dedicated entrance. So from there, I'll turn it back to council to see which direction council would like to go.
Okay, thank you. I'll just start off by saying that, again, this evening, if this is something that we're going to revisit as far as moving to the town office, which I'm in favor of, I would like it to be unanimous, please. And also a couple of reasons why I would like to move back to council chambers is the first one is that we are on fiber optic at the town office, so that will help our live streaming immensely, because I have always had problems watching live stream. The previous 4 years before I got elected, there was always problems with the live stream cutting out. And even last week we had, or 2 weeks ago, we had problems with that again, with the live stream kicking out. So I think that would ease up that problem. My other reason is that this is prime real estate that we have in the hub here. And we have user groups. There's a lineup of user groups looking for spaces to be able to use. So by moving back to council chambers, I would free up this space again for groups in Coaldale or anybody to rent the space. So that's all I have to say on the matter. So I'll open up to council for any comments or concerns, please.
Quickly, Mayor, I'm in full support of the town office. I would just maybe recommend that we continue to have bottles of sanitizer for both council members as well as for assembly or for the general public as they come, and that if the public want to leave their masks on during in the gallery, that's their choice, and I would certainly support their choice on whether they have a mask or not.
Thank you. And just to go on top of that is that we're going to be following the provincial guidelines, so I don't want this council to be policing anybody that comes into council chambers in the public gallery. It'll be up to personal choice as long as we stay within the mandate. So, any other discussion? Does somebody care to make a motion? Councillor Avery, or Deputy Mayor Avery, my apologies.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. I'd like to make a motion that we move our council meetings back to council chambers effective first meeting in March.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Deputy Mayor Avery's motion? Seeing none, could I call for the vote, please? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 4.2, the Coaldale Summer Event Naming, the draft public participation plan. Melanie Messier is going to be presenting on that. So Melanie's going to be presenting on the public participation plan for the rebranding of the summer celebration event that was presented at our regular meeting of November 22nd, 2021. Good evening.
Good evening.
The floor is yours, Mel.
Thank you, Mayor. So the following report is to present Council with the draft public participation plan for the rebranding of the summer celebration event, which initially came before Council at the November 22nd Council meeting of last year. The proposed plan is an essential step in engaging the public and seeking input on community values surrounding Coaldale's events. The engagement proposes to take a phased approach to the name selection, including an initial survey to identify key values and community sentiments towards previous events. The survey will be open at the beginning of March and closed at the end of the month. Following the collection of feedback, staff will return to Council at the first meeting of April to present a summary of the responses and to propose viable name options. At this meeting, it will be the decision of Council whether an additional survey is necessary to allow residents to choose the final name of the August 6, 2022 summer event. The Let's Connect Coaldale platform will be used for the full course of the engagement, while the opportunity to engage will be advertised on the town's social media and other media channels, which are listed in the proposed plan. It is worth mentioning that a teaser poster for the event will also invite residents to participate in the survey while acting as a save the date advertisement. So with that, Council is respectfully asked to consider the following options. Option 1 is that Council approve the Coaldale Summer Event Naming P2 plan as presented. Option 2 is that Council approve the Coaldale Summer Event Naming P2 plan with amendments. Option 3 is that Council table the item for future consideration at a future meeting. And option 4 is that Council provide alternative direction to administration. And with that, I'm open to any questions. Mayor Van Ryan.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Melanie? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, through to Melanie. Thank you so much for this update on the name changing. You mentioned in here community interest groups. Would you be considering our seniors as a group that you might want to interview or have participate in the name changing?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Chapman. Yes, we often will circulate a copy of the survey via paper to the residents of the Sunny South Lodge, and then we go and we collect those responses and we manually input them into the survey.
Any further questions? Does someone care to sponsor one of the motion options, please? Councillor Beekman.
I'll make a motion to move for option number 1.
Okay, Councillor Beekman makes a motion that council approve the Coaldale Summer Event Naming Public Participation Plan as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.3, the West Coaldale Draft Public Participation Plan, and Melanie's going to be presenting on that as well. Go ahead, Mel.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. The following report is to present council with the draft public participation plan for the West Coaldale proposed development, located on the lands legally described as Parcel B, Plan 358-4JK, and a portion of the Northwest Quarter Section T-9-20 of the West 4th Meridian. At the February 14, 2022 regular council meeting, the developer provided a letter as an information item outlining their intention to begin the detailed planning and engineering design of the previously described lands. This area is located in the western portion of town and borders the following existing developments. The area is south of the highway commercial area consisting of the Coaldale Nursery, Home Hardware, and the Canadian Reformed Church. It is west of the Westgate Subdivision and Stormwater Pond. It is north of the Land O'Lakes Golf Course, and it is east of the undeveloped lands zoned as urban reserve. It is worth noting that there's an existing area structure plan for the area, which the development is subject to. The developer is currently in the preliminary design phase, and any amendments to the ASP will be determined following the proposed engagement. The P2 plan proposes to seek general feedback from surrounding landowners on initial thoughts and concerns with the proposed development in its current location. Questions such as, do you have any comments or concerns with the proposed development surrounding existing, traffic connections will be posed, just as an example. Following the engagement, concept development will be initiated by the developer and will incorporate the feedback from the P2 plan or from the engagement, while the opportunity to review the feedback and any potential amendments to the ASP will take place at a future council meeting. So with that, council is respectfully asked to consider the following options: that council approve the West Coaldale development P2 plan as presented. Option 2 is that council approve the West Coaldale P2 plan with amendments. The third option is that council table the item for future consideration at a meeting or at a future meeting. And that the fourth option is that council provide alternative direction to administration.
Okay, thank you. I just have one question. So based on the staff report, you're going to be hosting in-person meetings with anybody that has questions or concerns about the development?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor Van Ryan. We felt that in-person meeting options was the most suitable for this development. We'll be hosting 2 days that applicants or residents can book a 30-minute time slot, and they can speak to the Planning and Development Department. And if necessary, we can have the developer there available to answer questions as well.
So with the lifting of restrictions tomorrow, what's the chances of us going back to the way we used to do these and have like a open house at the community center with storyboards that explain the project? We can have the developer or representative on site to answer questions, because I know for a fact there are residents that are too shy to phone in and make an appointment to meet with anybody to have a discussion. They rather just quietly walk in, look at the project, and quietly walk out unless something jumps out at them. Is that something that we can entertain doing again?
Yes, we can certainly entertain doing that. In the past, they haven't been as well attended. That was rationale for having the in-person meetings, so that they could have their specific questions addressed. But if there is a desire of council to have an open house, we can certainly include that.
I think for a development like this, I think that's going to be exciting news for Coaldale. and people are going to want to see what's going to be happening on the commercial corridor along the highway as well. So, Councillor Beekman, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. Melanie, I was just wondering, in regards to the, or when they did the public participation on the area just west of the quads, there was a couple Zoom meetings for that, Zoom group meetings, and I was wondering, is that an option here too? Because there is still going to be some people that, even though the restrictions are being lifted, some people that are wary of coming out. Is that an option that we could add that to our participation, or is that going to be too much of an addition, I guess?
It would come with double the work for staff to be able to facilitate both an open house as well as facilitate online Zoom meetings. It is doable. However, it's just given what council wants with the additional staff time.
Kalen.
And Ryan, just a couple of suggestions just to tie the discussion together. I appreciate the suggestion about Zoom being more appealing for certain members of the community. One potential option is to allow the appointment by only to be in person or by Zoom, and then add, as the mayor suggested, an open house type component in addition to the dates here. One of the nice things about having the appointment tool is that it allows people to have a half hour of one-on-one time with staff to ask and have more of a robust discussion. Whereas if you only have an open house, there's a number of people there and you're trying to accommodate and be good hosts to the number of people that are there, and it's difficult to give people a half hour of your undivided attention when there's a number of other guests. So my suggestion would be to do a bit of a hybrid and add an open house component to the appointment type system that's here, just to meet the needs of a diverse citizenry, but also to make clear that the appointments could be in person or on Zoom, just if there's a little bit of concern about that in-person element. It's just some food for thought.
Okay, thank you. And then would the material require a large space, or is this something we could do at the town office or something as well?
It would be based on the number of respondents that we would receive, so we could gauge the space based on the response that we received.
I'm referring to the presentation materials.
That could be facilitated within the town
Council
office.
chambers, yes.
It could be, but the community center would be a little bit better for spacing, even if COVID-19 restrictions are lifted.
Okay. Any other questions for Melanie? So I would like to add one motion option, number 1, and add the public hearing component not public hearing, the open house to that as well. Anybody care to sponsor one of the motion options? Councillor Pickering.
You, Jack, putting the extra on there to have the open house.
Okay,
Option
so
1.
Councillor Pickering made the motion that council approve the West Coaldale Draft Public Participation Plan as presented in conjunction with a public open house. Does that work, Kalen?
Yes, that's great.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item will be our public hearing. That is find the agenda item here. So item 6.1, public hearing regarding Land Use Bylaw Amendment 839-P-12-21 regarding second and third reading. Welcome, Cameron. So I'll call the public hearing to order at 5:20 PM regarding Land Use Bylaw Amendment 839-P-12-21 regarding second and third reading. The purpose of this hearing is to present council with bylaw 839-P-1221 being a bylaw to redesignate a portion of lands legally described as portion southwest quarter 23-9-20 west of the 4th meridian from urban reserve to industry. And Melanie Messier is going to present. Mel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. The proposed bylaw is an application to redesignate a portion of the lands identified in Schedule A of the proposed bylaw. It generally aligns with the suggested land use as per the town plan. The reason for the rezoning is to correct a historic error that was made in land titles and to rezone the proposed area as Industry I to align with the same zoning as the existing lagoons. The bylaw received first reading at the January 24, 2022 regular council meeting. Since then, notice of the bylaw has been circulated to neighboring landowners, advertised in the Sunny South News for 2 consecutive weeks, and posted on the Let's Connect Coaldale platform. As of today, 1 response to the circulation was received by Lethbridge County, expressing no concerns with the proposed rezoning. And with that, no additional feedback was received from the community on the proposed bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council for Melanie? Okay, I'll just ask one more time. Has council received sufficient information to make a decision on Land Use Bylaw Amendment 839-P-12-21? Okay, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 5:22 PM. Our council options are to provide second and third reading of the bylaw 839-P-12-21 that council tables or council refuses. Can I get someone to sponsor one of those options, please? Councillor Saylor.
And I'd like to make a motion for option 1.
Sponsor second reading. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Can I get someone to sponsor Councillor Rees? Councillor Rees, you'll sponsor third reading? Yes. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Mel, can you ask Russ to come out, please? We're just going to jump ahead to agenda item 8.1. And 8.1 is regarding to inform council and the public at large about the upcoming 11th annual Coaldale 2022 Family Fun Run event and request that council continue the tradition of supporting the event by paying a $30 registration fee for town council and staff willing to participate. And Russ is going to be presenting this evening. Hi, Russ.
Mayor and Council, it's good to be here. And Coaldale Christian Schools pleased to announce that they will be hosting the 11th annual 5K Family Fun Run on April 9th of this year. The event was held virtually in 2021 due to the COVID restrictions that were in place at the time. This year, the organizers plan to host both virtual and an in-person event with restrictions permitted, of course. This approach will allow participants to participate within their own comfort levels. This event is made possible through both participation and generous donations by the community, and the group focuses and will continue to focus on promoting local businesses. In 2017, we became a platinum sponsor of this event. We've supported it in some way or facet right from its conception. Funds generated are donated to local community enhancement projects, and the portion of this year's proceeds are being put towards the development in the grounds adjacent to Pinnacle Park, which is over by the Coaldale Christian School. Plans for the space include a street hockey arena, sitting area, walking paths, and some improved landscaping at that location. Also, we should mention that $2 from every entry will also go to Rehabith Coaldale, an organization that enables individuals with disabilities to have a meaningful and dignified place in society where they can live, contribute, and fellowship with others. Volunteer community groups such as this have a very positive impact on the community when they take on events like this, both physically and mental, for the community's physical and mental health. It's not a huge commitment for the town to support, but certainly we like doing that, and we're just here to ask council if they want to continue to support it in the way of contributing a team. So there's two options presented here to council that tell council approve the following: enter a town of Coaldale team, pay the registration fee for $30 per participant, and direct community services to collect council and staff registrations. And then the other option would just be that at this point in time in 2022, we don't go that route for the family fun run. Our recommendation, administration, is that we continue to support it in hopes that our participation will spur other people to participate as well. And so we recommend that the town council accepts this family fun run report as information and further direct administration to enter a town of Coaldale team, pay the registration fee of $30 per participant, and direct community services to collect council and staff registration.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. What is the largest number of participants that we've ever had? What are the other members of council or our CAO remember?
Yeah, I did look into that, and I did provide, to this point, if we were to go to what our maximum, what we could remember, it would be up to $900 contribution.
Okay, but Lana, how many people did you say? Okay, cool. Okay. So I think this is a great endeavor, and I plan on being there myself, so I'm hoping that we could get other members of council to come and participate as well, and make this a fun team-building event as well. So is there any questions for Russ? Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. And not a question, I just concur with what you're saying. It is a really fun time, and in the past, even if you can't run, a couple of us as council walked it, and then a couple of us tried to train to see if we could get the best time in. So, we get a little friendly competition going amongst council too, so I would like to make a motion for option number 1.
So Deputy Mayor Avery makes a motion for option number 1, that council enter a town of Coaldale team, pay the registration fee of $30 per participant, and direct community services to collect council and staff registrations. Any further discussion?
Just a question.
Councillor Saylor first, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. I agree. I think it would be an awesome thing to do. I'm actually a longtime supporter of this event, and I will be entering a team through Twisted Steel this year as well. So I thought, to make it more interesting, like Jason had said, perhaps we put a little friendly wager on this, my team versus the town of Coaldale team, and kind of like how the Calgary mayor and the Edmonton mayor do, like when the Flames and Oilers play, So we could do something like, if you guys win, I have to wear, I know how much you love ties, perhaps I'll wear a tie every meeting for 2 months. Or maybe if I win, you guys all have to do a photo shoot in Twisted Steel gear or something like that.
So are you implying that you're going to give us some fitness training then too, or?
Well, I'll probably give you some negative. So I get an upper hand, but.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you. I think that that might be a conflict of interest now. Just a question through to Russ, if I may. I support this full-heartedly. I participated in the past as well. This is an exciting event. The platinum sponsorship on top of it used to be on top of the registration, and I'm not too sure if we're doing that this year then, or is that we're waiving that part in lieu of hopefully getting 50 more people out.
So through the chair to Councillor Chapman, There is $1,000 that the town continues to budget within its operational budget that go towards this event.
Any further questions for Russ? There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Russ. Can you ask Kyle to come out, please? Okay, we're going to jump ahead, or jump back now, I should say, to agenda item 7.1. Our CFO, Kyle Berchamp, is going to be presenting on the tax penalty bylaw 842-C-02-22 for review and update. Welcome, Kyle.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, so we have the tax penalty bylaw for council's review today. So the reason we're bringing this forward to council is I'm sure most of you are familiar that the property tax deadline has been extended the past 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is very similar approach that was taken by municipalities across Alberta. So last year, the property tax deadline was extended from June 30th till September 30th, giving residents an extra 3 months to pay their property taxes. Upon the deadline, a 9% penalty is due as part of this bylaw. That's still consistent with previous or pre-COVID-19 measures. In review of some data from other municipalities, many are not extending the property tax deadline for this year. We want to bring this back to council's consideration to review the opportunity of going back to the pre-COVID-19 measures for property tax deadlines. It's important to know that approximately 28% of the town's property taxes are paid monthly via our TIP program, which means that leaves a balance of about 72%, which has to be paid by the deadline. So property tax deadline is important for cash flow and operating for the town of Coaldale, as we have expenses throughout the year. If we're only getting most of our cash to fund those expenses at the end of the year, sometimes it can operationally be somewhat of a challenge. With that being said, we've recommended a property tax deadline of June 30th with a 9% penalty to remain on July 1st, as you will see in Schedule A of the bylaw. Again, this reverts all of the COVID-19 deferral measures and goes back to what was in place pre-2020 here. That being said, I'll turn this back to council for any questions they may have.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Are there any questions for our CFO? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and just through to Kyle, just my only question to you is the fees associated will be 2021 rates, or like there won't be any changes to the rates?
Correct. The fees noted in Schedule A of the bylaw are the ones that have been consistently used for numerous years before. There's no changes or additions or subtractions recommended as part of this.
Any further questions for our CFO? Deputy Mayor Avery.
Reverend Ryan, I'd like to make first reading of tax penalty bylaw 842-C-02-22.
Any further discussion on Deputy Mayor's motion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Beekman.
Proceed with second reading of tax penalty bylaw 842-C-02-22.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Councillor Beekman's motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Saylor.
Ryan, I'd like to make a motion that we move to the third and unanimous reading of the bylaw 842-C-02-22.
Okay, what you really mean, you got to back up to number 3, the unanimous consent one, please.
Number 3, unanimous consent to provide
so-
third reading of the tax penalty bylaw, 842-C-02-22.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And I need one more sponsor, Councillor Reese.
I'd like to make a motion that council proceed with third and final reading of tax penalty bylaw 842-C-2-22.
Thank you. Any more discussion on Councillor Reese's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We're going to jump ahead now to item 8.2, the in-town busing agreement, and Kyle is going to present on that as well.
So in front of you today, this evening, is the busing agreement between the town of Coaldale and Palliser School Divisions. So this busing agreement is an annual agreement that is brought forward to council for review and approval. So this busing agreement essentially covers students who live closer than 2.4 kilometers from their designated school. It makes them, those students, again, if they're closer than 2.4 kilometers, they're not eligible for the special grant from the Alberta Education and Transportation. So the this agreement covers students attending any Palliser School Division in the town of Coaldale and the Holy Spirit Catholic Church School Division, so that being St. Joe's, from grades kindergarten to grade 8 only. This does exclude students attending Coaldale Christian School. So the number of bus passes sold last year was 120, to which we had a demand of 130 in that year. The number of bus passes available is determined by Palliser School Divisions, to which they've bumped that up by 5 to 125 this year. There is an operating cost with this, so the town of Coaldale does provide a subsidy payment for this that is approximately $14,000 every year. The balance of that, the balance required to fund the service is covered by the resident requesting the bus pass. It's requested to keep the value of the bus pass the same at $260 per pass, so no increase or decrease from the previous year. With that being said, I'll turn that back to council for any questions they have on this agreement.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What's the reasoning that Palliser limits the amount of passes?
Part of the reason is, I believe it's just the availability of what's on the school buses, how many kids they take. They don't necessarily want to have more capacity than they need to. Think of it, if they have capacity for 140, but only 130 are on the bus, just throwing those numbers out there. From an operating standpoint, your costs start to become a little higher than what you're selling your bus passes for. It's kind of what I've received back from commentary. So they've slowly increased them by about 5 bus passes every year. When I first started here, they were only selling 100 bus passes, and now we're up to 125. So that's just kind of the general guidance I've received on them. We've made attempts before, or not attempts, but requests before to increase bus passes, and they kind of say we're limited to what we can offer for this year, and that's at 125. I haven't asked or broached that question again this year, but that's just kind of the rhetoric we've heard from the past.
And then a follow-up question, like, do they reset the list every year, or so everybody gets thrown into a pool and they pick, or how does that work?
So the bus passes are sold at the town of Coaldale. So the bus passes are available for sale after July 1st, so the day after Canada Day. Parents, residents can come down to the town and purchase the bus pass at the office at a first-come, first-served basis. Majority of the time, the bus passes will sell out just before the beginning of the school year, so at the end of August, before the beginning of September. So generally, residents do have a little bit of time to come get the bus passes, so But again, it's a first come, first served basis. So if you're last to come in, you may be stuck without one.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our CFO? Councillor Chapman.
Ryan, and thanks to Dexter Durfee for keeping a good pulse on this issue. And I appreciate the fact that you're also monitoring the request for busing, whether at the town office or at Palliser, and I'm sure that that's where they come up with their numbers. So I guess my question to you would be, is that after Christmas, for example, are those numbers reviewed if we need to increase, or this will be for the full 10 months of the year?
This is for the entire school year. So even if once the bus pass is sold, Palliser makes the schedule, and they don't like changing it, right? Because it's dependent on where each individual student lives. So they can't really change the bus route for the schedule. So if there's any deviations, or say a child moves away during the year and wants to refund on this bus pass or whatnot, that's not really an option, because Palliser doesn't have the ability to change the pickup schedule essentially after it's set.
Thank you. Any other questions for our CFO? Okay, we have two options. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Pickering.
Thanks, Mayor Van Ryn. I got a question for Kyle. So what happens, like, do they give the schools notice that there is only 125 busing passes? Because what happens if we have a demand of 140? Like, you're pretty well saying it's like a lottery then. Like, should we not be notifying the schools in the fall or spring that this is all that's available?
So I believe the procedures on how this is followed is that a letter does go out from Palliser to the schools and to the the kids and their parents and stuff like that, letting them know the option to purchase a bus pass. Generally, if you've purchased a bus pass or you know how it works, you're kind of familiar with coming into the office, whether the deadlines and the due dates. But if there is a huge spike in demand, that's a possibility, but just based on what we've seen before, we haven't seen it like a huge spike. Like, we've always had that 5 or 10 extra bus passes 5 or 10 less bus passes than we need. But generally, I believe students and parents are given information about this ahead of time, so that they're usually aware of when they can come purchase the bus pass. So if they go on sale on July 1st and they sell out at the end of August, there is quite a bit of time there for people to come and purchase a bus pass before they do sell out. So unfortunately, yeah, there will be probably 5 or 10 people who don't get a bus pass, but that's just kind of consistent with how it's always been, unfortunately.
Okay.
Suggest that for next year that we consider maybe even a 10% increase in our budget for that capacity in case those numbers get bumped up. I don't know what our census is going to be, and I'm sure Palliser has a really good idea at this point as to what their student numbers are going to be for each of the schools K-8. So I'm trusting their numbers to be accurate, and yet if we do get quite a surge in interest in busing, that we should be considering planning another 10% increase for next year.
Yeah, excellent comment. Yeah, we usually follow historical trends and whatnot for previous numbers and purchases and trend projections for future years for budgeting that. Yes, so we do take that into consideration.
Councillor
Follow
Pickering.
up? Yeah, thanks, Mayor Van Ryn. The reason I was asking was because when we have the new school finished over on the north side, that busing is going to go up immensely. And I was wondering, are they pre-planning? Because that's, it's going to be like, there's going to be over 700 people moving over there. There's going to be at least out of that 200 probably.
It only works for 2.4 kilometers or less. So if you're 2.4 kilometers or less, you have to find your own way to school, correct? Unless
If
you take
you're
the bus pass.
If you're under 2.4 kilometers, you're eligible for busing, in-town busing, if you purchase this bus pass.
Yes.
If you're over the 2.4, yes, you already receive free busing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beekman.
Yeah, thank you. Now, is that 2.4 kilometers? Do you know if that's 2.4 in driving distance or 2.4 as the crow flies?
The specific measure of how they determine that, I'm not entirely sure. What I've been told is it's essentially whatever school your child, should be going to or is going to, the distance from their house. So my best guess would be, it's if you live on 11th Ave and you go to, R.A. Baker and stuff, or something, 11th Street, and you go to R.A. Baker, like, what's the Google Maps distance? Like, driving distance is what I would assume, but I don't know the exact specifics on that to answer that question.
Okay, yeah, and just only asking simply because if you're going from McDonald's to the new high school, if you're just to go the most direct route is going to be a third of what the actual driving route is going to be.
Yeah, that's, I can look into that if that's something council wants further information, report back on that. Sure.
Okay, any further questions? So our options are, number one, council approve the 2022-2023 busing agreement with Palliser School Division as presented, or option number two, council request additional information before approving the 2022-2023 busing agreement with Palliser School Division. Can I get someone to sponsor that, one of those motion options, please? Councillor Chapman.
I'll make motion to approve the 2022-2023 busing agreement as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. Can you send in Mark and Shelby, please? We're going to be backing up to agenda item 5.1, delegation by appointment. We have Shelby Gibson coming from regarding animal welfare, bylaws, and responsible pet ownership. And along with Shelby this evening, I asked for Mark Anderson to come as well. And I purposely asked you both to come early so you got to know one another in the other room. So okay, good. Okay, so I appreciate your coming out, Shelby. The floor is yours. We're just firing up your PowerPoint, I believe, here. So.
Hopefully it worked.
It's on, yeah.
And you got to use your outside voice, okay, Shelby?
Okay. Sorry. Would you like me to begin without the PowerPoint, or?
It's just loading. That's okay. You can just maybe introduce yourself and tell us what you do and what's
Sure.
your interest with all of this.
Sure. So my name is Shelby Gibson. I am currently a manager at a veterinary clinic. I have been within the veterinary industry since 2012 as my professional career. Started out as a volunteer. I have received diplomas in both veterinary technical assistance as well as veterinary practice management. So I have come to council today both in a personal as well as professional capacity, simply because I am a manager of a veterinary clinic, and animal welfare is a extreme passion of mine. So I do think that I can offer valuable insight and a unique perspective of my particular position in terms of making animal welfare a topic of discussion for council to make things better for the citizens of the town.
Okay, thank you. Your PowerPoint is up and running and ready for you.
All right, so Lana, I think you can go through the first, I think it's 2 slides.
Yeah, okay. So my format for the presentation, I'm going to go through my reasons for the presentation, current pet information and statistics for Coaldale, potential areas of improvement within Coaldale that I see, general animal welfare and stray pet structures of other areas to take as for examples, and then plan of actions or suggestions, and then closing remarks. I would like it noted that these are simply only suggestions, these are only ideas, which is a really good thing. We have a plethora of ideas, we just need to know where to start. So that's kind of what this presentation is for. So next slide, Lana, sorry. Reason for presentation. So I do feel that reevaluation is needed on current animal bylaws and general animal welfare structure within Coaldale. So we need to work with existing welfare actions as well as find ways to develop or improve on how we can approach and maintain small animal and domestic pet welfare and responsible pet ownership within our community. I have seen pet owners struggle in almost every capacity that there is, and it is a goal of mine to help as best I can with those. So the hope is to be a leader for Coaldale, to be a leader in animal health, welfare, and education for responsible pet ownership, and be an inspiration and quality example for other small communities within Southern Alberta. Next slide. Okay, so general information here. So we're going to start with stray canines. So there are 3 different things that can happen when a stray canine is found. So first of all, if a citizen finds it, the citizen can choose to keep that pet until it is the owner is found. So that can be done in multiple different ways. Sometimes they are identified with a tag, sometimes posting on social media, things like that. The second option is for them to contact the local veterinary clinic, so that would be the Coaldale Pet Clinic here in town, and see if there is anything that can be done that way. So the Coaldale Pet Clinic would ensure that they check for a microchip, tag information, see if they can identify the pet through there. The third option is that they call the bylaw officers here in town as well. So those bylaw officers and the clinic as well too. From there, those 2 have multiple different options depending on the health status of the pet. So the first health status would be an uninjured dog. So that means that the dog appears to be completely healthy. There's no obvious wounds, things like that. From there, the pet clinic can again try and identify owners from there, same with the Coaldale officers. The second is an injured dog. This is where it gets a little bit more tricky. If it is an injured dog, as a veterinary clinic, they are legally obligated to provide health care to that pet, even if it's unclaimed or not. So that's where they need to work closely with the Coaldale peace officers and bylaw. Because the bylaw officer needs to be contacted, as they will, for lack of a better term, claim the animal as their own until they can find the owner themselves. So there needs to be a close relationship there. The third is a deceased animal. Again, needs to work closely. The clinic would need to work closely with bylaw as well. As a deceased animal, until it can be claimed or an owner can be found, needs to be addressed in that sense as well.
Shelby, if I can just ask a
Yes.
question. Mark, can you explain what happens now if you or one of your CPOs picks up a dog has been found?
Our current process is that we take the animal to Lethbridge Animal Services. We have a contract for them for housing and for homing the dog with their owners once they're identified. We do not keep any dogs ourselves in town here. We will make every effort while we have the dog, as long as it's friendly, to locate an owner while it's still in town before turning them over. But that would just involve us keeping them at the fire hall with us, or making inquiries with our own town office to see if we can identify who the owner of the dog is.
And how long has it been since we haven't used that kennel at the town shop?
The kennel at the town shop was shut down in October of 2020.
Okay. And then how often does the animal services come out to Coaldale to do patrolling?
They're out here daily to do patrol. We have a contract with Lethbridge Animals so that they do routine patrols here every day, usually 1 patrol per day. Last year, they responded to 34 requests for service from members of the community and from Coaldale Bylaw as well. Other than that, they came out on their own. We had a total last year of 58 calls, I believe it was, for that required response of bylaw and/or Lethbridge animal.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Shelby.
Sorry, I apologize, I've lost my place. No, you're fine. Okay, we can go to the next slide, Lena. Information for cats. So cats are a little bit different, as the town currently now has cat bylaws. So they are essentially divided into the same 3 categories as well: if they are uninjured, if they are injured, or if they are deceased. Generally speaking, if they are uninjured, there's not much that a citizen can do if they are not prepared to take on the animal. So there's not much that the citizens can do other than the same options as for a dog. So they can choose to keep the animal until they are able to find the owner or rehome it themselves. Or they can transfer it over to Lethbridge Animal. Now, that being said, for cats, it's a little bit different transferring over to Lethbridge Animal Bylaw or Lethbridge Animal Services as well too, just because of the Lethbridge bylaws for cats as well too. It's a little bit of a gray area from a clinical standpoint. It's kind of a, like I said, a gray area, to be as specific as possible, unfortunately. We can go to the next slide, Lana. For other stray animals, so this includes exotic animals, guinea pigs, snakes, things like that. Unfortunately, snakes don't go missing very often, but if they do, their protocol is the same as cats, as there are no specific exotic animal bylaws as well too. On that note, there are not many areas that do have a bylaw for exotic animals, so that would be a difficult one. So my presentation is more specifically focused on cats and dogs, but I do need to throw that in there as well too. Lena, you can go to the next slide, sorry. At the time of compiling this presentation, there was not a lot of information that was available in terms of statistics for Coaldale. What I was looking for specifically was to find how many stray animals were found within Coaldale and then how many had been reunited with their owners. That information wasn't available during this presentation. However, we've just heard that there were, 56 calls. Which is, when you divide that out monthly, not a lot, but overall it's a very high statistic for a small town like this. Most of this information that on this presentation is basically from social media posts. Now, this information is not necessarily to be taken as stone cold concrete evidence, of course, because it's social media posting. So there is a margin for error in terms of duplicate posts, posts that where pets have been claimed and no one has updated the post, things like that. So from 2 separate Facebook platforms here, Facebook for the Coaldale Community Awareness Facebook page. From May 1st to January 31st, there were a total of 96 posts about lost, found, or deceased pets. So approximately 12 posts a month were about missing animals, just from that one particular Facebook page. 34 were about dogs and 54 were about cats. The remaining 8 posts were about other animals such as rabbits and birds and things like that. And then there is the second Facebook page, which is from the Coaldale Lost and Found Pets Facebook page. Again, from January 1st to January 1st, 2021 to January 31st, 2022, there were a total of 84 posts. So again, that's about 6 posts a month, which is substantially less than the previous Facebook page. However, again, I have to note that this information is not solid concrete evidence. This is just what the information that I could gather at the time. For Town of Coaldale here, there is a total of 663 active dog licenses. So if you divide that by 34 posts over approximately an 8-month period, so there's a 5% stray dog rate over an 8-month period. Again, this is based on only the current information available. This information strictly not professionally gathered in a formal manner, just simply from a clinic perspective. I would argue that that rate is actually higher, just simply from the amount of calls from a veterinary clinic standpoint that we receive. Next slide, Lana, sorry. So taking into the account of the number of social media posts regarding cats as opposed to dogs, it is reasonable and safe to assume that stray cats are one of the town's major issues regarding the animal welfare and bylaws, is my personal opinion. There's no way, again, to accurately tell how many stray or found cats from the posts actually belong to someone, or if they are a wandering barn cat. It should be noted as well, too, that from this information here, we do live in a large rural area, and so there are a lot of farms that have farm cats on there. So a lot of these posts that I've collected from these Facebook pages could in fact be barn cats that are claimed. However, they're not identified, they're not microchipped or anything like that, which makes them appear to be strays as well. So it's not, there's no exact detail of how many of these cats ever get found or claimed by new owners, or by their owners, sorry, whereas dogs usually get claimed and posts are updated fairly quickly. So in terms of just a handful of posts that I had looked at over I believe it was a 6-month period, there was very rare occasion that the dog had not been claimed or picked up by an owner within 72 hours. And there are no bylaws supporting cats within Coaldale as well, so the majority of stray cats get brought to rescue groups by concerned citizens if they are found, especially if injured. So going back to what the process is for what happens if a stray cat is found, that's not including these cats that get brought to animal rescue groups within Lethbridge, such as Last Chance Cat Ranch, things like that, by concerned citizens who don't want these cats to remain outside. The next slide is Lethbridge animal statistics. So I was able to gather this information here. So approximately from 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022, as you can see from the numbers up there, the overall numbers of monthly stray animals has been decreasing overall, which is a fantastic thing. However, there are still quite a few that happen. Now, these are stray pets that go unclaimed as well, too. This number is included. At the time of gathering this presentation, there was no way to differentiate at the time which ones were unclaimed and which ones were claimed for that. And then stray dogs is the same thing. Starting at 29, 24, 23, and then 20, again, has been going down substantially, but still not enough in my opinion. In my opinion, I would like to get that number to 0, but I mean, this is also Lethbridge as well, too. So. This information does not indicate the percentage of return on animals, like I said before. It appears based on this information alone that Lethbridge is not experiencing the same volume of missing cats. However, again, please keep in mind that there are currently no bylaws supporting cats, and therefore a majority of the stray cats that are found by citizens or somebody else are brought into rescues. Okay. Continuing on, statistics and general information continued. So the dog regulation and control bylaw for the town of Coaldale, it is accessible to any citizen just by a simple Google search. This bylaw appears to have not been updated since 2006. There is an amendment, I believe it is 769-R-09-19. It appears to have an amendment, but it's specifically related to livestock. So it appears from the general citizen standpoint that this bylaw has not been updated since 2006. There are also currently no bylaws within the town of Coaldale for cats, so therefore that means that there are no limits on how many cats people can have in their home, et cetera, et cetera. Indoor, outdoor, indoor restrictions, things like that. The facility that the stray dogs are brought into within Coaldale is unknown. As we heard earlier before, it's not necessarily that it's unknown, it's that the one that we had originally is shut down, and therefore it's now moved over to Lethbridge Animal Services. So that's an important note to make for a correction for this presentation here. There's only currently one designated off-leash park within Coaldale, for dogs, sorry, not for cats. Off-leash park for cats might not be so good. As well as many citizens, both in Coaldale and around the province, are also unaware of veterinary costs and medical upkeep of a pet, as such as yearly vaccines recommended, proper nutrition recommendation, et cetera, et cetera. That information is no specific source to be cited. It's simply an observation from working at a veterinary clinic. In turn, one of the concerns that I see is that a lot of this lack of information and lack of available information, is that there is potential to have a really high increase in pet abandonment or relinquishment if something were to happen. So that unfortunately happens more often than I would like to admit, although I don't have a specific statistic for you on that. So my potential areas of improvement or suggested areas of growth here, again, these are only ideas. We need to start as step one. So for areas of support, canine support, one of the things might be to consider a secondary off-leash park or a different style of off-leash park perhaps. Also a new stray facility within the town of Coaldale if the contract with Lethbridge Animal Services were to ever be discontinued or adjusted in any way. Something to that effect. Feline support, so one of the things that I would suggest is to consider creating a spay and neuter program to help to control the cat population. So that does not necessarily mean cat licenses or anything like that. It could be simply speaking with local veterinary clinics and discussing a solution for the stray cats around the area, spay neuter programs. There is a spay neuter task force that is up in Calgary that goes around to two areas, mostly for reserves. However, from my understanding, they do a lot of inner city stuff as well too. But something similar to that effect that would help for that kind of population, especially because, that these especially from recent, how shall I say, newsworthy articles about stray cats within the city of Lethbridge as well as town of Coaldale, it might be beneficial to implore something like that as well. Generalized pet support, so establish a facility for stray pets within the town of Coaldale, as I said before. Consider having a designated pet store. We don't have one here currently. There is, I believe, sorry, it's not called the Bargain Shop anymore. It's called, I can't remember.
Red Apple.
Red Apple, sorry, yes. They do have some available stuff for pets. However, a lot of the citizens need to travel to Lethbridge to find something like that. It might be something worth looking into partnering, or not partnering, but getting a designated pet store here. And considering developing a town program accessible to all citizens which lists responsible pet ownership guidelines, which includes veterinary care as well too. So again, along with adjusting the animal bylaw from before the dog regulation and control bylaw that hasn't been updated since 2006, it might be beneficial to do more of a campaign for promoting responsible pet ownership. So whether that be, and that could mean anything, that could honestly mean doing a open house for pet information. So get a dog trainer in, get a veterinarian in, things like that. Something, just have a more accessible program for people to gain information. Legal support, dog regulation and control bylaw should be revisited, sorry, like I said before. Consider creating a cat bylaw. I understand that that's more difficult than what it sounds. However, it might be something to consider for, obviously, not immediate future, but something to consider in the future in general. With these, sorry, next slide, Lena. With these suggestions, I have developed some slides here with some information for a larger town like Lethbridge, what they are doing currently, and a larger one than them, such as Calgary, and then a larger one than them, actually it's a country, which is the Netherlands. So taking examples from what they're currently doing and seeing if, of course, not everything is going to apply, especially from the Netherlands. It's just something to sort of get the gears going, so to speak, in terms of some ideas of where we can start. So for Lethbridge, for canine support, so if a citizen calls regarding a stray dog, an officer from Lethbridge attempts to retrieve the animal. It is then taken to their facility for housing until claimed or is adopted out. Recently, they launched, the city of Lethbridge, launched a foster program out of the building to help alleviate the amount of dogs that are kept at the facility for an extended period of time. From what I understand, this new foster program has had nothing but great success so far. A maximum of 2 dogs are permitted in a home with the exception of a breeder or fancier's license. For feline support, cat licenses are not currently required, so no maximum number of cats is permitted at a residence, and there's no current spay or neuter program for stray cats. General pet support, there are an abundance of pet stores all over. However, there are no bylaws regarding avian, exotic, and pocket pets. Again, not necessarily something I'm focusing on, but that's just something to note. For legal support, they do enforce animal bylaws daily with a small team of peace officers as well, bylaw officers, I apologize, and they do a fantastic job as best they can for the amount of calls that they get, which is awesome. For Calgary, Canine Support, they have multiple facilities around Calgary for stray cats and dogs. If a citizen calls regarding a stray animal, an officer from Calgary Animal Services attempts to retrieve the pet and is then taken to their facility for housing until claimed or is adopted out. Cat licenses are required. There are a maximum number of 6 cats permitted in the home with the exception of breeders. Again, you need a special license for those as well. General pet support, again, there are lots of pet stores within Calgary. Again, no bylaws regarding avian and exotics, except for those classified as livestock such as chicken or pigeons, which is fine. And they've been working closely with major rescues to help with veterinary care as well as fostering and adopting animals. So recently they've published an article that the city of Calgary has a contract now with ARCS, which is a rescue up in Calgary, in terms of alleviating the stress of the amount of pets at one particular facility, as well as veterinary costs for a injured animal or a not spayed or neutered animal, and then foster programs as well from that. Legal support, of course, they do have bylaws daily. The local veterinary support, the city has their own veterinary team in a couple of their facilities where animals are housed while awaiting claim and adoption as well. So they do employ technicians and veterinarians, as well as just general support staff, kennel care attendants and things like that, to help make sure that all of these pets are taken care of, proper care of, while they're in their facilities. The Netherlands, again, this is only simply for reference, for example. Canine support, so the Netherlands was proud to boast themselves a country with no stray dogs in 2019. It took them a very long time to get there. It took them about 4 years to get there. Every dog was brought in for sterilization while working closely with the local veterinary clinics, and also given an exam and vaccines. So every single dog that was ever found, it didn't matter if it was claimed or not. Every owner could bring in their own pet, or if they found a stray pet, they brought it in. And that pet, no questions asked, was spayed or neutered, given a microchip, and given their first vaccines, depending on the, of course, health of the pet as well. And they've also increased their foster program, which led to a substantial increase in adoptions as well. And then currently still, it is mandatory for all dogs to be spayed and neutered unless they have a specific license to breed that animal, and even then still too, there are special requirements for breeding that animal, such as they can only breed it, I think, if I remember correctly, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that they're only allowed to breed the animal once or twice, and then it needs to be spayed or neutered after that. And of course with that, they have strict animal bylaw officers as well. For feline support, many supports for dogs also apply to cats as well too. It is unclear of the number of stray cats or if they've implemented the same spay or neuter program for cats as they did dogs. However, it's still a fantastic program that I'm sure could be transferred over in some aspects for that. General pet support, most other laws listed are applying to ferrets, for bringing ferrets into the country, etc. And again, multiple pet stores, it's a large area, of course. Legal support, they created stronger laws for animal welfare and even created their own designated police force to monitor it. Multiple laws such as mandatory licensing and registering, implementing a dog tax, which is only applicable in selected areas, and mandating microchips for cats and dogs too, to make sure that they can all be returned to their proper owners. And local veterinary clinic support as well. You can't spay and neuter without some local veterinary support, so they definitely worked closely with a lot of them. So for my plan of action, my starting point ideas here, this is a lot of information to throw at everybody. There's a lot of ideas. So the best place to start is to start as logistically small as possible, I suppose. So the first thing that I would maybe suggest is possibly starting a animal welfare committee of some sort. So that would be, this particular committee would be having a combination of strength of active citizen participation as well as council membership. So the reason for that, of course, is to council membership to ensure that the committee remains accountable to town rules, regulations, and guidelines, of course. They are also key in pursuing local or federal funding if required. Citizen participation to ensure that citizens of Coaldale have a voice in developing and maintaining new initiatives and programs. Like I said, that's going to be key because there are so many ideas, and not every idea that I have, or everything from the Netherlands or from Calgary or from Lethbridge is going to be applicable here. So it's going to be very, very important to get citizen input on that as well too. And then also the committee can also reach out to local veterinary clinics as well too and see if there's a relationship that can be developed to help with all of these suggestions or anything like that. Citizen input, of course. So citizens, like I said, should be consulted on what they feel would be a good change for the cats and dogs at Coaldale. And this information should all be collected in a very formal manner. It should not be that, you know, I put a social media post out there from my own Facebook page and say, what does the community want? It should be collected in a formal manner. The reason for that is because then any decision that council makes regarding that, regarding any suggested anything for animal welfare or animal bylaws, is not simply based off of the word of one person. It's formally collected and it's been reviewed and it's been agreed upon. So an example for this that I have up on the slide here is that Calgary was able to provide a public link to a detailed survey for where people needed to confirm they lived or worked in Calgary and had a dog or cat. So this also presents, if I just did it on my regular social media page, there is a possibility that people outside of the town of Coaldale or that would not be applicable would put some insight into there, which would not be applicable for our whatever it is that we're doing. Retrieving and analyzing this data first will be key in deciding where to start with these. It changes initiatives and ideas. So I believe that we need to start with that council and then gather that information so that we can decide how to move forward from there. I believe that is the best way to start for that. Other suggestions and resources available for future consideration is reaching out to rescue groups. So we have a lot of rescue groups within Lethbridge, within Southern Alberta, that I'm sure would be more than open to working in some capacity with whatever it is that we are asking for them. Of course, it requires conversation and details, of course. But also you can gain information from the rescue groups around. So you can take a rescue group and you can ask them what are they finding that is the most concerning for the rescue. So whether that be owner surrender or they're finding that most stray dogs are coming in injured or something to that effect, it'll help obtain some data for that to help us decide where to start with. So if they're finding, for example, that all of these stray dogs are coming in injured, okay, well then we might need to look at stray dogs, assessing what we can do for stray dogs first rather than the dogs that are already owned and claimed and currently safe in a house. Obtaining other information from other citizen resources, so such as NOCA, which is the No Kill, or the Humane Society in Lethbridge, to gain their perspective on generalized animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. So again, that kind of goes into the same thing. What is the Humane Society seeing in terms of animal relinquishment? What's the main reason that they're finding? Are they finding that it's just because of finances, or are they finding that it's behavior related, et cetera, et cetera? Finding and gathering all of that information would help us figure out what's a good way to go. If even they are finding that they're getting animal relinquishments from Coaldale, if that's even something to consider. And then also, again, like I said, speak to local veterinary clinics, both general practice and emergencies, to gain perspectives on deficits in animal welfare and responsible pet ownership that they see as well. So that could be if they see a lot of financial struggles or if they see a lot of behavior struggles. Again, all of this information is going to be critical in identifying where to go from here. So That's basically my presentation. I apologize, it was a little bit longer than what I wanted to be, but I wanted to thank Mayor Van Ryn and members of council for listening to me. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
I would just like to reach out to our manager of community policing, Mark Anderson, if he has any comments on the presentation that he would like council to hear this evening, or you're just here to listen tonight.
These are comments I've had come over the phone to me from various people throughout the town of Coaldale, and I've spoken with other people before when they've approached me, particularly about cats, to try and encourage a community group to get together, and we've offered from our department to sit down with them and help guide them through a process of setting up something that you're talking about. So far, I haven't had anybody take me up on the offer. We do have a number of complaints on cats, particularly throughout the year, and it is a problem here because we have so many farms around us. At the moment, if we had a citizen who worked or lived in the town who wanted to take on that challenge of spearheading it, my office would certainly be willing to sit down with them and work with them and help with the process.
Thank you. So I'll open up the floor for any questions for Shelby from council. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and through maybe to our community manager, community policing, Mark. We have 653 dogs, I believe, that are licensed. Is that the number that was given us?
Roughly,
so
yes.
Is that 100%, or where are we at with those kinds of numbers?
I can't tell you if we have 100% because the ones that don't register them, unless we actually have a complaint, we don't know about them. I do know that there's 2 dogs I met today who were unlicensed in town, and they'll be licensed tomorrow.
Okay. Second question, we were just chatting about this around the water fountain just before council meeting tonight. Currently in Coaldale, we do not have a cat bylaw or a cat licensing requirement. Are licensing cats an option then, or is that something that we?
Properly addressed by council, whether or not you wish to license cats. It's certainly been entertained in other areas. Calgary, for example, has a cat licensing bylaw. I'm not aware of a jurisdiction our size that does have a cat licensing bylaw.
I guess my question more is about if that's still an option for people to license cats, as for example, or even another one, pocket pets that you were speaking about earlier, Shelby, and so I just thought maybe if we had something to that effect. But thank you, Shelby, for your presentation tonight too.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think that there's a couple of great ideas, Shelby, for the dog walk, and I'm thinking, you know, our future in Northwest Coaldale might be a great place to set up a secondary dog walking area. And of course, our Economic Development Committee, our department should be looking really strongly for a pet store, place where people can do their, take care of their needs here in Coaldale.
Any further questions? Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. To our manager of community policing here. I know you can't give me an exact answer on this, but what would enforcing a cat bylaw look like? Like if we had cat licensing, manpower-wise, what would we be looking at a nightmare?
We could not efficiently enforce a cat bylaw with the amount of people that we have on staff right now. It would be a real challenge.
I guess further to that, then, off the top of your head, would it require 1, 2, 4 extra staff? I guess what I'm asking is, would a cat bylaw be that much more difficult to enforce over, let's say, a dog bylaw? I know cat bylaw has been something that, it's a drum that's been beaten pretty hard on my end. On my end of things, I think all my neighbors want to see it because we got about a dozen stray cats at any given time. So.
In the other jurisdictions that I am aware of that have a cat bylaw, it's still run very similar to what we've been doing now, and that is that they'll have humane traps that are available to the citizen. The citizen, whoever has the complaint, is then tasked with the responsibility of trapping that cat and then turning it into the facility anyways. So from that aspect, no, we wouldn't have any more manpower. We need a lot more traps. If we wanted to actually have our people enforcing it, I would anticipate you'd end up having at least 3 more people just to deal with that.
Any more questions or comments for our panel? So Shelby, as you stated, there's lots of information here to digest. The committee that you're referring to, that's going to have to be something that is citizen-led. And I know that we'll have members of council willing to step up to the plate. At the time that I met with you, along with Councillor Reese, she expressed interest as well to be on a committee such as that. So I think it would be wise then with the outdated dog bylaw. Is it outdated?
Yes, it's outdated and it's already on my desk for rewrite this year.
Okay. So then I'd like to ask our CAO what's the best way of moving forward on this. Like, I'm willing to sit down with you again, Shelby and Councillor Reese and anybody else that wants to discuss this committee along with Mark Anderson and possibly another member of administration to kind of come up, because I think this is something that needs to be done. Like, and Kalen, you can answer this for me. Like, this has been before council numerous times since your time on council, correct?
That's correct.
So I think it's time that we do something about this. So if it's okay with you, then we're going to discuss this as a council, and then I'll get back to you or Lisa, and then we'll come up with a game plan. And then Mark, if you're conducive to sitting down, and we'll see who all needs to be sitting at the table to get this off the ground and up and running.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. You did a very good job.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mark. Okay, moving on to item 7.2, the video lottery terminal bylaw 840-R-01-22. Second and third reading. Cameron Mills, Director of Growth Investment, will be doing the presentation. Can we take a 4-minute break? Thank you. Welcome back. We're just going to close the loop on agenda item 5.1, where we had Shelby Gibson speak on the animal welfare bylaws and responsible pet ownership. I'm looking for a motion that this discussion be brought back to council within the next 3 months to give administration time to look into it further and to discuss with the author, Shelby Gibson, about the next course of action. Can I get someone to make that motion? Councillor Reese, any discussion? All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 7.2, the video lottery terminal bylaw 840-R-01-22. For discussing second and third reading, Cameron Mills, the Director of Growth Investment, will be presenting on this. The floor is yours, Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. So to provide a summary of some of the discussion here with respect to bylaw 840 R0122, which is a bylaw for council's consideration that would allow for the installation of video lottery terminals in the town of Coaldale. So to date, just to recap some of our discussion, at the January 10th, 2022 regular meeting of council, a motion was made to direct administration to bring back a draft bylaw for council's consideration that, if it was approved, would have the effect of reinstating the operation of and use of video lottery terminals in Coaldale. That draft bylaw was prepared and presented to council for consideration at the January 24th regular meeting of council, at which time it was provided first reading. Following that, a public hearing on the matter was scheduled for the February 14th, 2022 meeting of council, and at that public hearing, we had an opportunity to hear from citizens speaking both in favor of and opposed to the bylaw. And in addition to the citizens who spoke at the meeting, we received a tremendous amount of correspondence on the issue, and so that was all provided to council for consideration as well. And in the interest of considering the volume of correspondence, at that point, an additional 2 weeks was provided for consideration of that, which leads us here today at the February 28th, 2022 regular meeting of council, where we're providing for the opportunity to consider second and potentially third reading following that public input. Now, there were staff reports with a significant amount of information attached to each of those reports to council. In the interest of time, I won't rehash all of it. What we did include as part of this particular staff report, and something that we included on the Let's Connect page, public feedback page, was sort of an FAQ page to discuss some of the issues that were brought up through the public hearing process and some of the things we'd heard through some of that correspondence. All of this is information that is either coming from largely from previous staff reports, but is consolidated in such a way as to make it easy and accessible, so that folks don't have to go through hundreds of pages of reports and information necessarily to find it. Largely having to do with previous decisions of council over the years and discussions with the community on the matter, and also considering some information with respect to revenue the town might collect from VLTs, which is to say no revenue is collected by the town from the operation of VLTs, and also how that revenue is split, which is to say there's a 15% split between the to the operator, and 85% goes to the provincial government for their funding. So with that, I think there's been a lot of information presented at this time. Obviously, council's had a lot of time to consider things. I'm here to answer any questions you might have at this point. And with that, we have some recommendations provided as part of the report as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the floor for any questions or comments to Cameron. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and through to council. We have seen a lot of information here over the last number of weeks and months, and so having the floor here, thank you, Cam, for all your hard work putting this all together and putting the past reports together, even for the last council to deal through. So what I'll propose is to table this till we have I'll table second and third reading until we have a plebiscite to deal with such. And the plebiscite will involve this. It'll be a simple question which will involve, it'll be similar question to what was held in 2017. And the question would be to allow, if you would allow VLTs in the community, or secondly, prohibit VLTs in Coaldale. And further, that if the results of the plebiscite are that the yes votes have the most votes of 50% plus one, that following the plebiscite, that council be authorized to hold a second and third reading to this bylaw 840-R01-022. And further, that if the no votes are 50% plus one, that council be not be required to hold second and third reading of this bylaw. And that the cost of this plebiscite be borne by the town of Coaldale. So that'll be my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. There is a tabling motion on the floor. Any more discussion on it? Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking against the tabling motion, I believe there is a lot of information that is out there. I believe we have enough that we can work with. There's been a ton of correspondence going back and forth. I have a lot more I'd like to speak on the topic, but for in regards to the motion, I'm going to speak against it as simply as let's make a decision. We've all discussed this enough. We've all had enough correspondence with residents and whatnot in regards to this. We know the effects of VLTs. We know the benefits of the VLTs. I don't see the point of tabling this any longer. I believe as a council, we have a direction that we can go, and I believe that we speak our piece on it and we go forth with it.
Thank you. Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and through to council. I guess just this is such a touchy topic, you know, and no matter what way we vote, no one's going to be happy. We're not going to please everybody, whether we favor it or oppose VLTs. There's going to be people not happy about it. I also would say that I don't agree with tabling it again. We've already had a lot of time to go through all the notes and to think about it and talk about it. That's where I stand.
Thank you. Any other? Deputy Mayor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. And speaking in favor of the motion, I believe this also gives the transparency and openness that we're listening to the public. We go back to the previous two plebiscites where the citizens of Coldwell voted marginally the last time to keep them out. This, either way, will show that we are listening as a council to what the citizens are saying. So I would speak in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Avery. Any other discussion on Councillor Chapman's motion? All those in favor of tabling the VLT, you want to repeat your motion?
The tabling motion is to hold a plebiscite as per administration's date, and I would say around May 15th, which is a Monday, and that the administration define the wording for the plebiscite as such. Would you allow VLTs in Coaldale, or secondly, to prohibit VLTs in Coaldale, and which option would you vote for? And pending the results, again, if the yes votes have the most votes of 50% plus one vote, that the following the plebiscite, council be authorized to hold second and third reading to bylaw 840-R01-22, and if the no votes be 50% plus one, that council not be required to hold in second and third reading of this bylaw. I might just say further to that, that tabling this bylaw will allow the people of Coaldale to speak and exercise their voices on this matter as they've had in 1998 and as in 2017. And so while council has heard both sides fairly, as you say, Councillor Beekman, has heard both sides fairly and equally, that a public hearing is really our responsibility, and held a public hearing, that it is our responsibility now to step aside and allow for the transparency and the collaboration that we are accounted for. I might say in closing too that with this tabling motion, however council votes on this tonight, is that I will continue to promise to support either decision made by our residents or by council to embrace our community as a great place to live, work, and play.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Any other discussion? Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a quick question. Do you know what the estimated cost of a plebiscite is to the town?
I'll direct that over to our CAO.
Mayor Van Ryn, I can direct that over to our legislative coordinator. She recently was the officer over the election and has some insight on the logistics of holding votes like this.
Thank you for the question. Logistically, we wouldn't have electronic tabulators for something like that to calculate it, being that it's just one designated question. We would, however, have the cost of printing ballots, having the cost of staffing, probably to man at least a couple of days as an option for residents, maybe a weekday and a weekend. So I would probably suspect under $1,000 for labor costs and printing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question on Councillor Chapman's motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Avery against. Okay, so I'm just going to open up the floor for anybody that wants to make a comment. I just wish for you to, at the beginning, to speak if you're against, or I'm sorry, if you're in favor or against option number 1, or if you're in favor or against option number 2, and give you a few minutes to speak, if there's anybody that's interested in doing that. Councillor Beekman.
For giving me the opportunity to speak on this. I guess while I start to speak, I'll table that into a motion as well. There's a ton of misinformation floating around about this topic that we've been privy to since the start, but we all know so much about this topic already. We know the world has evolved so much in a quarter of a century. I was 16 when this ban came into play. 16. The internet wasn't even a factor then. We all know how easy online gaming is to access. We all know there's an incredible amount of VLTs just 10 minutes away. Why are we keeping the ban? Why are we fighting so hard to keep this ban? As a council, we've also committed to Coaldale being open for business, yet we're willing to impose unnecessary regulatory burden on our businesses. Do I believe VLTs are a savior? No, I do not, but I disagree with hindering a business's ability to succeed and banning a legal revenue stream. During the campaign, residents said they wanted more food and beverage options, but I can't see anybody willing to open a pub or a restaurant in Coaldale if we're already taking away a major revenue stream. What example are we setting for other businesses that want to come to Coaldale? If we're willing to impose this kind of regulatory burden on a business, what else are we willing to do? If this is about stopping addictions, you should know you cannot force an addict into overcoming their addiction. All around southern Alberta, we have dry communities, yet plenty of problem drinkers and alcoholics reside there. Why? The ban doesn't prevent the user from the fix, especially not nowadays. The first step in any 12-step recovery program is for a person to admit they were powerless over their addiction. If you take the addictive device away from an addict, unless they personally want to get help and are willing to take that first step, they will get that fix in another form. Again, you cannot force an addict to overcome addiction. If addiction is our focus, then we should look deeper into how the town of Coaldale can aid and support recovery methods within our community. And that's something I believe to be far more effective than banning one form of gambling, and something I will strongly support and advocate for. I've spoken with a few people who were involved with the '98 plebiscite, and all of which who supported the ban during the course of its life. Even some of them recognize the world has evolved so much that keeping VLTs out of Coaldale is somewhat redundant now. One of them said to me, the ban is no longer achieving what it was put in place to achieve. So my biggest question before anybody makes a decision here is why? Especially if we're keeping them out, why are we still keeping them out? With how much the world has evolved since 1998. Thank you. And on that note, would it be okay to make a motion now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that council approves second reading of VLT bylaw 840-R-01-22.
Thank you. Councillor Pickering, you want to have any comments?
Yeah, I would like to follow up on, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to follow up on what Jason said. I'm sitting back listening to comments I've heard too about the BLTs. We have 4 liquor outlets, we have 2 bars, we have a marijuana store in the town. I'm just going to carry on saying that people don't move to Coldwell because of VLTs or the bars or whatever. They move to here because it's a community they want to live in. We've developed in the last 4 years, our industrial park is full. Our subdivisions are full. We have a developer that wanted to build and process and make more new residential areas. I don't think that looking at the VLTs, what I've heard, is going to deter young couples or people from moving here. We need to move on. And like Jason said, the world is revolving and we need to revolve with it. So if we want to attract maybe more businesses, I'm not saying it's going to, but we should have, the business owners should have the freedom to carry on how they want to operate. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Avery.
And just speaking on addictions, opioid wasn't a crisis in 1998. Opioid became a crisis in 2013. The world has evolved. It's a man-made substance that people are addicted to. So to say the world has evolved, I agree, it has evolved. But has it evolved to the better? And should we be supporting that type of progress within our community? We have sold out our industrial park without BLTs. We have been one of the largest growing communities without BLTs. Why do we need BLTs? So I work with addictions. I sit on provincial boards with addictions and mental health. And the problem is real. The world evolves. Addictions, it's just going to trend because it's not the impact of the business or the money, it's the impact of the family and the community and the crime rate and everything else that's going to go along with it. So speaking against the motion with respect to council, whichever way it goes, I will support our decisions when we all walk out the door because we're here as a group. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Avery. Councillor Reese.
I think the only thing I'd like to add respectfully is just that, you know, our town is growing at quite a rapid pace and it's almost, we can't even keep up with it at some points, it feels like. And, you know, these plebiscites and these voting things that are the telephone surveys and things that are taking place, they're great. But I just wonder, like, that's only a portion of our large community, of our large population. So you got to consider the elderly, the people who are just turning of age that can gamble and all that kind of stuff. And Council, I believe we're doing our best to keep that small town feel, that vibrance and that passion that we've all grown to love about Coaldale. But at the same time, we have to stay on par with the livability, the comforts known as a small town and other municipalities and surrounding areas. We have to stay at an even playing field, so to speak. And thank you, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. So, running a business has been hit hard by the pandemic in the last 2 years. I know how hard it's been personally, and restaurants and pubs have been hit just as hard. And I feel that if we can do something that's going to help make sure these businesses stay, because we don't know what the future holds. If there's more of these type of restrictions come back, who's to say that our restaurants and things stay? If we can do something that's going to help them to generate some more money, why wouldn't we do it? And being a small business owner or wanting to start a business, being an entrepreneur, if I could have an extra something that's going to make me money while I'm establishing my business, it's going to help attract more businesses to Coaldale. It's a scary time right now, and if I could have something that's going to generate some extra income for me, I would appreciate having that option. And as far as the addictions part goes, like, I feel like it would almost be better to have them here, because if these people are addicted and they're going into Lethbridge to play the VLTs, they're just another body in the seat. Nobody cares. If they're out here, they're someone's brother, they're someone's neighbor, they're someone's father. I'd hope that the establishment owners would see this and do their part to stop these people and try to help them. You know, instead of just being a body in the seat, they're a community member, and hopefully other people would reach out and try to help these people. Because like Jason said, if you don't want help, they're not going to get help. But if they're surrounded by loved ones and people saying, you shouldn't be doing this, and they see them doing it, and they're not sneaking away to do it, perhaps we can actually help those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saylor. Councillor Chapman.
Yes, my mic is on, but thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. And again, however the decision goes tonight, my commitment is to live by that decision and move forward. I don't believe that this is my hill to die on. I'm excited about the fact that we've been able to be special in the province of Alberta as a community in so many different ways. And in 1998, Coaldale was among 10 other municipalities that chose to be special. And 21 years later, 21 years later, in 2017, I'm getting my dates mixed up, the people of Coaldale chose again. And we've moved 4 years forward. The people of Coaldale haven't felt like this is an issue that they've had to miss or that they've missed. They've been able to participate. They've been able to contribute back to the community. We're going to be having a family fun run on April 9, and people can contribute to that. I'm excited about what Ken Schmidt, as an example, has brought to Coaldale, and I had a really great speech that if I could share that for a moment about the applicant. And this applicant has certainly, in my mind and in my heart, shown the best of who he is and who they are as a business here in Coaldale. Since 2016, he has brought it up from nothing to what it is today, to be a destination point for food and for fellowship, for people to hang out and gather, and there wasn't any VLTs there to build that business to the point of what it is today. But I guarantee you this, that he has shown every one of us around the room today what it really means to be loyal to the community. And for those of us who understand loyalty, and we all do, is that Ken has always made it very, very clear that he has supported locally through purchasing all his gas, his supplies, getting trades to work on his building, all local. Washes his car here. He does everything 100% local to Coaldale, and that's the example what I feel that I want to give tribute to the applicant for this for these machines. So with that, I want to pay tribute to the applicant and for what he has brought to this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. And for myself, I just have a few follow-up comments as well, and it's all based upon hypocrisy. Like Coaldale, as we've spoken about many times, do not allow VLTs, but we still accept grant money that come from the proceeds of gambling. And over and above that, like Coaldale currently allows several different ways of gambling, including Lotto Max, Lotto 649, Daily Grand, Western Max, Western 649, betting on sports including hockey, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, tennis, boxing, golf, mixed martial arts. In fact, I can be gambling on my phone in the next 30 seconds if you have an account set up, never mind doing it from your home computer. And doing some research over this agenda item, I reached out to the granting organization through AJLC, and I'm just going to name off some grants applicants that were successful here in Coaldale. And Friends of Jenny Emery Elementary School, Coldwell and District Ag Society, the Gem of the West Museum, the Connect Club of Coaldale, the Coaldale Granite Club, Kinsman Club of Coaldale, Town of Coaldale Library, the Alberta Birds of Prey Foundation, the Coaldale Community Food Bank Society, the Coaldale and District Volunteer Firefighters Association, the Coaldale Copperheads Junior Hockey Club, Coaldale and District Soccer Association, Kate Andrews High School, R.A. Baker Middle School, Coaldale Musical Arts Society, St. Joseph School, Coaldale Senior Citizens Center, the Coaldale and District Chamber of Commerce. The town of Coaldale itself received over 20 grants. Coaldale Minor Football Association, Coaldale Healthcare Center Foundation, the John Davidson School, and I've talked to Councillor Chapman about this before, the Coaldale and District Handy Ride Association, where Councillor Chapman sits on their board. They received a grant for $38,398 to go towards a purchase of a new handy bus. So, and Coaldale Christian School is another one. These groups and many others have received over 200 grants totaling over $6 million, with 100% of the funding coming from the proceeds of gambling. Like the CFEP grants, for instance, the Community Facility Enhancement Program grant that the Coaldale Kinsman received most recently for $100,000 that I had Cameron Mills work on the grant for us. We received $100,000 for Eastview Park. Projects like that wouldn't be able to be successful unless we had these CFEP grants. Kinsman also received $125,000 for the spray park that we built. And I also, with the new skateboard park coming up, we're going to do a CFEP grant looking for the maximum on that one as well. Hopefully we can get $100,000 to go towards the success of the project for the residents and more so the youth of our community. Again, funds made available from proceeds of gambling. There are many of these groups that also work casinos that I personally worked many myself, and with the most recent one was in December for the Coaldale Baseball Association along with Councillor Reese. We both worked that particular casino, and the two-day casino payout was $34,000. A week later, the Coaldale Figure Skating Club had a casino, and Kinsman are slated for one in 2023. The groups rely on casinos and bingos to fund their programming and activities, and these funds come as a result of gaming. The point I'm trying to make, or more so, is ask the question to council, are we living in a hypocritical community where we say we will take your money, but don't you dare replace a VLT, the source of grant revenue in our community? And that boils down to the acronym NIBI fits Coaldale perfectly, not in my backyard. Also, AGLC provides funding for addiction programming and counseling across the province for gambling, the same for any other addictions that plague our community and any other across this province. I have a relative that just went through detox and is awaiting placement in a treatment center for alcohol addiction. Do I blame the liquor stores for his addiction? I do not. Closing liquor stores in a community will not stop the addiction. They will travel to a neighboring community to find one, and the same goes for VLTs. Not allowing VLTs in Coldwell will not stop anybody. They will just drive the 10 or 15 minutes to Lethbridge, Pitcher Butte, or 20 minutes to Tabor. Where a customer comes into the establishment to play the VLT, they may purchase a beverage or a meal that requires staff to not only prepare but also to serve the customer, thus creating job opportunities in our community. One resident asked if I was part of the moral police squad as being on council, and when I looked up moral police on Google, it came back as when a person or a group tries to enforce their moral laws on others. I do not plan on being part of this group when it comes to allowing a legal business entity into our community. When I put on my Chamber of Commerce hat for a minute, I served there as second vice president their mission statement is to improve the economic, industrial, and civic life of the community through the development and promotion of free enterprise. Free enterprise. So here we have a legal business opportunity. From an economic development point of view, larger chain motels, lounges, restaurants base their decisions on economics, including having VLTs as part of their business plan. Our community profile says that Coaldale is open for business. Are we? So those are the concerns that I have from a hypocritical point of view. And I just wanted to read, when I was doing my research, I came across a document from September 1998, and it says, hypocrisy. In the early January, the Premier made headlines when he attached a note to a lottery grant recipient in his constituency, St. Stephen's Ukrainian Catholic Church. The Premier questioned the group's motive for accepting money when they did not approve how the money was generated. In the end, the church returned the funds. Through his actions, Premier Klein publicly questioned all community groups and churches about their justification for accepting lottery grant money when they opposed the VLT program. The actions and comments of the Premier polarized the VLT debate and demonstrated the frustration with the issue. That was in 1998, and that continues here today. So that is my comments on the VLT debate that we're having this evening. So I'll just ask around council, is there any further comments or questions before we call the question on Councillor Beekman's motion to pass second reading? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of passing second reading? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Avery. And we need someone to make the next motion, please. Councillor Pickering.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Van Ryn, Mayor. I'll motion that we do the third reading on the video terminal bylaw 840R-01-22.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Avery. The motion's carried. Thank you.
This is history.
Okay, moving on. Councillor Avery has to leave at 7, or Deputy Mayor Avery has to leave at 7:30, so, thank you, Cameron. Can you send in Mel, please? Welcome back, Mel. You're going to be speaking on agenda item 7.3, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 839-P-12-21 regarding public hearing, second and third reading.
Sorry, just one moment. And just to clarify, Mayor Van Ryn, are we going over the safety fund request right now, or?
No. Oh, sorry. I forgot to check that off because we were bouncing all over the map tonight here.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I apologize. Moving on to agenda item 8.3, the safety fund request for accessibility and audit estimates. Go ahead, Mel.
Thank you. So the following report is to present council with a request for additional funding from the town safety fund and to hire an accessibility consultant to provide estimates for the recommendations identified in the accessibility audit final report. Council previously reviewed similar items relating to the accessibility audit, including a previous approval for $2,500 from the town safety fund at the June 14, 2021 regular council meeting, as well as in the acceptance of the accessibility audit report for information at the January 24, 2022 meeting. The request subject of this report includes an additional request for $4,200 from the town's safety fund for an accessibility consultant to provide estimates for the recommendations identified in the audit report with the following considerations. The accessibility consultant would provide estimates of probable costs for the 2021 audit, and they would also assist Access Coaldale in determining priorities to action the recommendations within the report. Optional services were provided by the consultant to provide conceptual drawings for items such as gender neutral bathrooms in some of the facilities like the arena and the Coldwell pool. However, given there are working groups specific to these facilities, such as the Waves and Blades working group, that are reviewing the future of the pool and the arena, these options have been omitted from the request. The annual budget for the safety fund is $35,000. Approximately $8,000 has been allocated to the replacement of the school playground signs, leaving a total of $27,000 in the fund. Should council wish to approve this request, the remaining balance of the fund would be $22,800. So with that, council is respectfully requested to consider the following options. Option 1, that council approve the request for $4,200 from the town's safety fund to hire an accessibility consultant to provide cost estimates for the 2021 accessibility audit final report. Option 2, that they table the request pending the receipt of additional information. And lastly, option 3, that council provide alternative direction to staff.
Thank you. And Mel, can you just explain one more time why you're dropping off the community center?
For the community center, the recommendations within the report would be included into that assessment, but to provide specific conceptual drawings for the washroom when there are no planned improvements for this facility seems like not the best use of resources at this time. The intention of the report is to align these recommendations with existing projects to begin, as opposed to paying for a conceptual drawing when there's no immediate plans to update the building.
So to do some basic safety enhancements, like we had a meeting there last week, and since you did that presentation at the chamber, people are paying attention now to when they go into a facility and grab bars and such. There was one mention that there's grab bars missing there, so minor little upgrades like that can still be done then?
Yes, that'll still be included in the consultant's estimates. However, to go in and provide an actual conceptual drawing of,
right,
reconfiguring
Yes.
those bathrooms, that would be the only thing that wouldn't be included.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the floor to any questions from council for Mel. Seeing none, we have 3 options before us that council approve the request for $4,200 from the town safety fund to hire an accessibility consultant to provide cost estimates for the 2021 accessibility audit final report, that council table the request, and that council provides an alternate direction. Can I get someone to sponsor one of their motions? Go ahead, Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. I'd like to make a motion that council approve the request for $4,200 from the town's safety fund to hire an accessibility consultant to provide cost estimates for the 2021 accessibility audit final report.
Any other discussion on Councillor Reese's motion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mel. Jason, can you just stick your head in the door and ask Dustin to come out, please? We're going to move on to agenda item 8.4, the speed limit reduction study. Melanie Messier, our town planner, and Dustin Yankee, our municipal engineer, are going to present this evening. Welcome, Dustin. When you're settled in, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. I'll start by providing an overview, and Dustin is here to clarify any specific questions that council may have. So a motion was made at the January 10, 2022 regular council meeting to direct staff to research and report back on preliminary topics of speed limits and other transportation matters in the community. The approach was taken that staff sought out the most robust data and information available, supplementing the information with a small number of comparable community examples. Larger communities, including the cities of Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal, have all undergone speed limit reduction programs where all communities chose to reduce speeds on residential streets from 50 kilometers to either 40 kilometers or 30 kilometers, and in some instances from 30 kilometers to, or from 40 kilometers to 30 kilometers. Some of the cities previously stated chose to pilot reduced speed limits in selective neighborhoods before making a final selection or a final decision on citywide speed limit reductions, while others chose to undertake substantial public engagement before piloting or making a final decision on reducing speed limits. All cities highlighted the importance of speed limit reductions being led by public education and clear communication as to what changes were being made as a result of the pilot or any permanent changes. It is worth noting that the City of Calgary had the most robust technical studies and budgetary information relating to the program, with highlights including that speed reduction has a significant net positive impact on the number of vehicle collisions over a period of time, including the severity of injuries as a result of collisions and the drop in the likelihood of a vehicle to pedestrian collision, resulting in fatalities. So a final summarizing note is that there is a net positive impact on driver and pedestrian cyclist safety when speed limits are reduced from 50 kilometers per hour. To provide a review of communities that are similar to in size to the town of Coaldale, staff engaged with the towns of Nanton, Okotoks, Banff, Turner Valley, and others, to which the responses were included in the report for council's review. The proposed next steps for staff include that staff identify key locations around the community to collect speed data, that the data collected from these locations, as well as the traffic calming pilot program, are prepared and presented to council for consideration. The council provides direction on pilot speed limit reduction program or a permanent changeover. And dependent on council's direction, that staff either initiate a rollout of the program, a permanent changeover, or no change at all. If the pilot program is desired, staff would prepare a public participation plan and present it to council for approval and then execute the plan. If the pilot program is desired, then the speed data would be collected after new speed limit signs were installed, and feedback would be collected through the public participation plan, and feedback would be presented to council as a comprehensive information package to help inform the next steps. It is worth noting that the report was a collaborative effort between the Planning and Development Department, Infrastructure and Operations, and the Manager of Community Policing and Community Peace Officers. The financial implications of a speed limit reduction program, either permanent or a pilot, including signage and a number of other factors, is expected to be between $15,000 to $20,000. And with that, council is respectfully requested to consider the following two options. That council approve the immediate next step of staff identifying key locations to collect speed data from, and then summarizing data from the strategic locations chosen for this project and the speed data collected from the traffic calming program locations, and then to return back to council with a summary to inform our next steps. Or that council provide alternative direction to administration.
Thank you, Mel. Dustin, you have anything to add to that?
In terms of lowering the speed limit from 50 to 40, I do want to add a couple things. We did speak to the city of Lethbridge as well. It's something that they're looking at. They have been talking about for the past number of years When we talked internally, it's something we thought would be beneficial if other communities around Coaldale were pursuing the same changes. There has been other communities that mentioned that they're corresponding with the province as well on the Traffic Safety Act. So if, pending on timelines of when we decided to make these changes, there is potential that other communities are likely going to be making the changes as well, in addition to the ones we've mentioned. So there is quite a momentum coming. Just something to keep in mind. Another thing in terms of enforcement, right now with photo radar, we can actually only enforce playground zones, school zones, and anything over 50 kilometers an hour. So something to keep in mind as well is if we do lower the speed limit, that takes away one of the tools we have to target speeders that come through the area. Another just mention of my perspective, looking at speed data that we have collected so far, there generally isn't a speeding problem in Coaldale. We're seeing a lot of speeds around 40 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour. I believe that the perception is generally that people think drivers are going faster than they are, and that's, if you read through some of the comments from other communities, that's what they were finding as well. So that's where that perspective of collecting more data we think would be beneficial, because we can look at the whole community and find out as a whole, are people actually speeding in town, or is it more of a perceives, I guess from pedestrians, everyone. I think if you have children playing in front of your house, 50 or maybe even 40 feels much faster than it should be. So that's the other consideration is maybe 50 is just too fast. So just a few things to keep in mind. Yeah, and I guess I'll open up the floor if there's any specific questions.
Yeah, I just have one follow-up question. Like, safety is paramount, but the comment you brought up about the photo radar, so if we need to make a change to that, is that something that we can do? Like, with the province? Like, is that regulated?
Yeah, right now there's a moratorium on for all photo radar locations, so December 1st is when that'll be lifted. So right now, we can't propose any new locations.
I'm not talking about new locations, but changing the parameters.
There's a strict rule that anything under 50 can't be unless it's a school or playground zone. So that would, yeah, be something to consider, is that we couldn't enforce on our roads that we're changing to 40, the way it's written now.
Right. Well, thank you for the clarification, but again, safety is paramount. And then a question for our CAO, the funds for this will come from where?
Excellent question, Mayor Van Ryn. My recommendation for the funds, should this be a direction council wishes to pursue, would be from that same safety reserve, of which there's a current balance of 27,000 less 4,500 as a result of the motion made for the accessibility consultants cost. So there's roughly about 21,000 that would be left from that account. I would recommend using that as the principal funding source for to pursue this.
Okay, but for the sake of the motion, we don't have to bring that into it. That was just a general question.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. This goes to Dustin. With the photo radar there, you said we would lose out because we can't do it on streets at 50. Would we lose out on a bunch of locations that we are currently using, or is it more in playground zones and on the highway already?
Primarily right now it is highways and playground zones. I can't speak to every location, I'm not 100% sure, but those are the major ones, are playground, school zones, and the highway.
So those are the major ones, so if we did drop it down, in reality, we wouldn't really be losing too many locations that we're currently using.
Yeah, that would be fair to say, yeah.
We wouldn't be lowering the speed on Highway 3 though, or 845, because that's Alberta Transportation, correct?
Highway 3 definitely would not be something that they would consider. Highway 845 is a bit more of a convoluted question because of the amount of driveways that back on to the highway. So I have had cursory discussions with Alberta Transportation, and they're not going to give a direct answer, but it's pretty much uncharted waters, I think is a fair way to put it. They're experiencing this in other communities, so as much as they want to, like, their job is to promote traffic flow. They get people from point A to point B, but they're also open to hearing, I guess, our side, which is safety considerations and the benefits that come with dropping the speed limit. So it's something that we'd have to talk to them about if council wanted to approach them about Highway 845. It is something that could potentially be viable.
Well, if we're going to do this across the town, then that's 20th Street then, correct? So,
that's correct.
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. I have a question for Dustin. Where seems to be the general area that this speeding is taking place? Like, is it just all around the town, or is it just in certain areas?
Thanks, Mr. Pickering. We've gotten requests, complaints through our traffic calming pilot program. Primarily, Cottonwood is one of the main culprits, and we've had complaints in the past that just have come through administration. Highway 845 is a common one. And then there are other areas around town, and since we've had the traffic analyzers, we haven't noticed actual cases of speeding. There are instances of people speeding, but on average, when we look at we refer to the 85th percentile, and that's what traffic engineers refer to as considering it a speeding problem. And we're looking at most locations of about 40 to 45 kilometer an hour, 85th percentile. So when we look at the data, there's nothing really jumping out at us saying that we need to enforce traffic calming or make people drive slower. There's still people going very fast. You have the odd driver going 90 kilometers an hour plus. But that's, I think, no matter what rules you try to enforce or what traffic calming measures you have, there's always going to be those cases.
So basically, we're looking at, we need more education on the subject of people and their driving habits and lowering the speed limit. Because no matter what we do, we're still going to end up with the odd one that's going to push the limit.
Education could play a vital role. I guess another consideration too with lowering the speed limit is it's good to have it close to the speed that most people are traveling, because when traffic's flowing at the same speed, there's less likely for collision. Oftentimes when the speed limit is too high, that there will be a broad range of speeds people are traveling and a higher likelihood of collisions. So even if people are going 40, it could be beneficial to put the speed limit at 40, just to try to keep more people going at the same speed in general.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Dustin. Purely hypothetical here. If we were to lower the community speed limit in the residential areas down to 40, do you think that would help us advocate to Alberta Transportation for lowering 845? I know 845 is a big cause of concern for a lot of people, and I think there'd be a lot of benefit to lowering the speed limit, plus 2 major crosswalks for children crossing all the time. If that was a way we could advocate to get 845 speed limit dropped, do you think that would help?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Beekman. I mean, I can't say for sure. It might become more of a council-driven item, something that Alberta Transportation would want to see the merit that it has for the community. So even if it's not justified from an engineering perspective, it's not to say that if the community wants it bad enough, it's not impossible. So it would have to be something that potentially council maybe writes a letter to Alberta Transportation to help promote our case.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryn, and thanks so much to both of you for your presentation and report on this. And I'll be supporting a motion, however, to move forward with the study as presented. I guess what I'm seeing for myself, and I'm just sort of high vision perspective, I support the idea of reducing speed. I think the reason for me is that we have so many younger families here in Coaldale, and I know how many people use pathways to do their walks, but sometimes it's just walking around town, and we have a lot more residential area than we do have any other spaces, and so people are just wanting to be comfortable about where they walk and you know, just enjoy our community. So I believe that it'd be paramount for us to look at it from a very holistic perspective and view the whole community. I think the only areas of the community where I don't see speed reduction to be necessary would be the industrial park, and but the rest of the town, I believe, would be really critical. So where you put your traffic analyzers and find out from your studies. The other thing to reducing the speed, obviously, and what I hear from people on the street is enforcement. And so if photo radar is not helpful or valuable to us in areas less than 50 kilometers an hour, then we need to have more manual enforcement. And I think that's going to be one of the bigger educational tools for getting it right. So my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. So if I understand correctly, you're going to sponsor option number 1?
That is correct, yes.
Option number 1, that council approve of the immediate next step of staff identifying key locations to collect speed data from and then summarizing data from the strategic locations chosen for this project and speed data from the traffic calming pilot program locations and presenting a summary of its findings to help inform next steps. Any further discussion on Councillor Beekman?
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking in favor of the motion there, I 100% agree. As you both stated, there's a couple communities have already enforced this, and many other communities are looking into it. I don't think we sit and wait for everybody else to do it before Coaldale jumps on board. I believe it's an opportunity for Coaldale to be leaders. Photo radar cash flow is not my concern. It's not my biggest concern. Safety is my biggest concern. And if we can lower the residential speed limit, photo radar can focus more on the high traffic areas. So 100% I support that.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll call the question on Councillor Chapman's motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Dustin. Mel, you get to stay. Okay, moving on to item 8.5, request for a development permit extension. Mel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. This report is to present council with a request for a time extension for the existing development permit 2020-097, where the applicant is Destiny Homes Incorporated. To provide some context, at the September 16, 2020 regular MPC meeting, the development permit was approved for a ready-to-move manufacturing and sales facility. Within the administration section of the land use bylaw, it states that the validity of a development permit may be extended only once for up to 6 additional months. In August of 2021, the applicant benefited from 1 6-month time extension, and as such, any additional extensions must be approved by council. Given the works within the development permit have not changed, the applicant has requested an additional extension, stating that the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have impeded their ability to fulfill the conditions of the permit. The applicant is requesting a 9-month extension to ensure they're able to initiate the permit and avoid any additional extension requests or the need to reapply for an additional permit. Should council wish to deny the request, the applicant would need to reapply for the permit through the Municipal Planning Commission, which would be reviewed at the earliest at the March 9, 2022 MPC meeting. So with that, council is respectfully requested to consider the following options. that council approve a time extension for 9 months for the development permit 2020-097 with the new expiration date identified as December 16, 2022. The second option is that council may table the request pending the receipt of further information, or lastly, that they refuse the request to grant an additional time extension for the development permit.
Thank you. Any questions for Mel? Councillor Chapman.
Was there a one-year extension, or I see 9 months here, but was there initially a 1 year? Did I read that somewhere?
No,
There was
wasn't.
initially a 6-month,
Oh, 6 months, okay.
yes, time extension that was granted on the staff level.
I would move for the 9 month extension, make that motion.
Okay, so Councillor
No,
Chapman makes a
Kalen Go ahead.
makes a motion that council approve a time extension of 9 months for the development permit DP 2020-097 with the new expiration date identified as December 16th, 2022. Any further discussion on Councillor Chapman's motion? Yes, Kalen.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Deputy Mayor Avery, just before you left, just raised a question about the dates contained in Mr. Van de Vendel's letter. It's dated currently February 16th, 2021. The intent is that should have been dated February 16th, 2022. Is that, and then the time limit on our permit expires on or about March 16, 2021. Should that not be March 16, 2022? Just wanted to ask for clarity because I'm assuming this letter was directed to this council and this wasn't a letter from past council term.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can,
Pardon me?
you spoke to the applicant directly on this?
Just the letter, and he did receive that new extension that was enforced by our development authority at the time, which led for it to be March 16, 2021.
So based on your information, his request is in fact accurate then, correct?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, so it's just a typo on his part, so. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor by Councillor Chapman. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to, thanks Mel. You can send everybody else out, okay? Moving on to departmental reports. Agenda item 9.1, 2021 Emergency Services Department Year-End Report. Presenting this evening, our Fire Chief Kevin McEwen, our Deputy Chief of Operations, and Dem Clayton Rutberg, and Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson. Welcome, gentlemen. Whenever you're settled in, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Van Ryan and Council. Thanks for having us here tonight. We are doing the 2021 year-end report from Emergency Services, and I have two of my finest here with me tonight, Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson, and Deputy Chief of Operations and our Director of Emergency Management, Clayton Rutberg. So they are going to speak on their sub-departments within emergency services. I will start off to give you a report on the fire side of things. All right. So if we could just go to the next slide there. So showing our call volume over the last 5 years, you can see over the last few, we've had a significant increase in calls, which we saw a big jump in 2020. We were quite busy through the initial stages of the pandemic there, and that just continued to carry on into 2021. This was the first year that we jumped over the 500 mark. We were kind of betting with each other all year long to see if we were going to hit it, and then eventually smashed quite far past that. So looking at some of these numbers, 16.7% increase over last year. Fire calls alone, 27.5% increase in fire calls since 2020, and a 9.2% increase in medical calls. Regarding fires, definitely a busy year. We had a busy summer, lots of big fires, July, August, and our structure fires in itself was up 62% as compared to the year before. So definitely a busy year for fires for us. Next slide looks at how busy we were, or how many incidents we did by month. So you can see the first quarter, just into the second quarter, April-ish, that's pretty average. That's been our typical average, and then you can see how busy we got starting in May, and it just continued to increase until the end of the year. So historically, we average about 35 calls a month, and we average 45 calls a month in 2021. The green bar there in September, we did 65 calls that month. So 67% greater than September of the previous year. 38 of those calls were medical. We had 3 fire alarms, 11 fires, 3 mutual aid responses, 6 motor vehicle collisions, and 4 other calls, gas leaks, odors, citizen complaints. Next slide just looks at how many calls we did within the town of Coaldale versus in Lethbridge County. So in the town itself, we did 367 calls, and in the county, we did 177. So 67% of our calls were within the town of Coaldale and 33% in Lethbridge County. And just to break down those calls a little bit, just between fire and medical in nature. So in the town of Coaldale, the 367, 124 fire calls, and 243 medical. So that's a fairly standard ratio that we kind of see from year to year, is about 60-40. This past year is 66 to 34% medical versus fire. If we look at the county, again, this is pretty typical that we see a complete reversal of the calls. We do far more fire calls within Lethbridge County, not so much medical. So 69% of the calls, or 122 calls in 2021, were fire in Lethbridge County, and 31% were medical. So this pie chart breaks down our calls by type, just to give you an idea of what types of incidents that our department responds to. So 55% all in are medical, 14% fire alarms, and that doesn't mean they're all false alarms. Definitely a lot of the time we do go there and there is something on scene that we need to deal with, so it's not all false alarms, it's just automatic alarms. 13% were fire in nature, and that was a little bit higher than 2020, where 9% of our calls were fire. So definitely, we had that busy fire season for sure. 11% were motor vehicle collisions, which is pretty standard. 4% were other. So again, those odors, hazmats, citizen assist, electrical calls, stuff like that. And 3% were mutual aid. So a fairly busy year for mutual aid calls. So mutual aid, again, is when another fire department is calling for our assistance. So that could be Pitcher Butte having a large hay fire or hay shed fire and needing our water tender or more staffing or more trucks.
Excuse me, does that have lots to do with the fact we have the ladder truck now?
That actually has been playing a factor. It's been called out numerous times to other areas in the county for mutual aid calls, for sure. Same with the city of Lethbridge. Our ladder truck spent 18 hours at Green Prairie for that fire. So definitely coming in handy. It's a regional asset that any department that has an agreement with the county can call for. So these two charts here just showing hours. So the one on the left, time on calls, that's actual straight time, straight hours of us actually being on an incident itself. And it's just a breakdown between the town of Coaldale and Lethbridge County. So the town is green, so 47% of our hours were in town, and 53% of our hours were in the county. So although 67% of our calls are in town, we're doing more hours in the county altogether, because these are the, the Green Prairies and the hay shed fires, far more complex, time consuming, and strenuous on our resources. So a lot of time out in the county on those bigger type calls. Firefighter hours incidents, so this is your staff time per member, how many hours everybody is putting in. Over 2,600 hours in the county, 22 and a bit in the town. So total hours that we spent actually out engaged on calls, 525.5, and total staff hours at incidents was 4,902. Next chart looks at code red calls, and just a very brief review of what that is. We track code red calls in the town of Coaldale only. This is when we actually get dispatched to a medical call in the town of Coaldale when there's no Coaldale ambulances available and there's ambulance coming from out of district. So we saw a huge increase in 2021. And you can see the change, and it continues to go up kind of year over year. It's a 120% increase since 2017, so just in the last 5 years. We are seeing this quite regularly. We have been going, especially last year, with those 33 code red events. 90% of the time, we're responding with Lethbridge Fire EMS on those events. So, we were seeing Lethbridge quite frequently on calls. Just the other day, Saturday, February 19th, Coaldale was in red alert, as AHS calls it. There was no ambulances in Coaldale for 24 hours. So that was due to a staffing issue. So they shut both ambulances down for 24 hours. During that 24 hours, our department responded to 3 code red calls, and each time we had an ambulance coming from Lethbridge, which is a bit of a saving grace because we know they're about 14 minutes away, and we're not waiting on a Raymond or a Tabor or a Pitcher Butte. So we respond to, typically in our response protocol, Delta and Echo level calls. We'll go to every one of those calls with the ambulance. Those are supposed to be the most life-threatening, time-sensitive in nature. So the 3 calls that we did that day, one was an Alpha and one was a Charlie. So had there been an ambulance in town, we would not have been toned out to those. One was a Delta, so we would have went anyway. But 2 calls, because the ambulances were short-staffed, our department had to fill the gap. Moving on. Again, so we had $22 loss significant fires. So estimating from our investigation reports that we had just over $2 million of loss. Again, these large hay sheds, haystacks, vehicles, buildings, kind of added up to that dollar loss over the last year. However, we still did a great job and were able to save property as well. That's why we're there too. So estimated that we saved $1.1 million worth of property. Fire prevention, public education. Due to the health restrictions, some of our public education activities were hampered again through 2021, but we were able to get back out and get our local fire inspection program up and running, getting back into the businesses after 2020. It was difficult to get into businesses due to, different restrictions that were in place. So we were able to complete 146 fire inspections in the town of Coaldale, and some of those would have been in Lethbridge County as well too. 22 fire investigations, 3 home safety inspections. And for those on council that don't know what that is a free program that we offer the community. So if anyone wants a firefighter or one of us to come to their house, do a walkthrough, look for simple hazards, slips, trips, storage of flammable liquids, smoke detectors, checking batteries, they can call us up and we're happy to come over, do a walkthrough of their house. And the next one there, smoke alarm replacements. Thanks to donations from local groups, we typically have the opportunity to purchase smoke alarms in bulk, usually once a year, and we'll happily go out to people's places and help them out to replace their smoke alarms. So definitely our seniors, if they're unable to get up on a ladder or they're scared to hop on a chair, we're happy to come help them out. Burn permits, this is in town only, and we do only issue burn permits within the annexed area, and that is continuing for now. So 25 of those were issued in 2021. Public education, like I said, it was difficult, again, due to the health restrictions. We were not able to have our open house again last year, but we were able to deliver some fire prevention materials and education materials out to the schools. So we got a ton of stuff dropped off to the schools there, made a couple quick visits, and we did a coloring contest for the kids and gave out a couple gift cards for prizes. Firefighter training, lots going on this slide, but definitely a busy year for training. A lot of certified courses were completed. So I don't want to go too much in detail and talk about it all night, but NFPA 1001 Level 1, 7 people certified. So the NFPA 1001 Level 1 is kind of like your baseline firefighter training that we're getting all of our people trained to. Typically within the first year, they're going to be able to hit that. From Level 1, they'll go on to Level 2, 7 people certified in that. Blue Card Command, that is the training that we give all of our officers. So all the chief staff, captains, and lieutenants take Blue Card Command training. So initially to get that, that's a 60-hour online course followed by 3 days in a simulation classroom, and you get certified as a Blue Card Incident Commander. There is continuing education that you have to do with that, and you have to recertify every 3 years. So officers got that done last year, recertified last year, and we got 10 new people signed up, senior firefighters, to go through that training as well too. 1072 is hazmat training, so 7 people on that. 1051 is wildland training. 1006 is rescue awareness, so low slope rescue using ropes and knots, different equipment like that, which was really great. We hadn't had a course like that before in Coaldale, so people really enjoyed it and we learned a lot of new skills. 1521 is a incident safety officer course, so we sent one of our members out to Tabor for a weekend and they did that safety officer course. The 1851 is actually a cancer awareness and prevention course for firefighters that we have on our training platform online. So we've been working with our department over the last couple of years to get everyone through that awareness level training. So 39 people have completed that. Thanks to DC Rutberg, 6 people finished ICS 100. Sent a couple people up to NISCU to do vehicle extrication, heavy rescue training, and 2 members took mental health first aid training. So early in 2020, we divided up our training evenings. So historically, we trained every Monday night for 2 hours. So because our group is getting quite large, we wanted to still train while being safe throughout the pandemic. So we split to Monday and Wednesday nights. And we've maintained that training schedule. It's been working very well for our department, and we've noticed a good increase on people get more time hands-on, right? So you don't have a group of 30 people there, you know, you're maybe 10 to 12, a lot more time, better training, more hands-on. So we're going to maintain that. It's also good for volunteer flexibility, right? So if someone wants to coach their kids hockey on Monday night, you know, they would would have missed training for that week, right? Okay, well now they can come on a Wednesday and make up for it. So it's good feedback on that. It's working well. Recruit Academy is something that we implemented last year as well. So when we hire new volunteer firefighters, they're now going through a Recruit Academy. And again, a big thank you to DC Rutberg and our fire training officer, Parker McGill, for putting this together. A huge success. So they go through these 11 training nights, and they're taught all the basic skills, a lot of the similar 1001 skills, but they're not an active member. They don't respond on calls until they've completed that Recruit Academy. So by the time they're done that, they hit the floor, they're comfortable, right? Comfortable going on a call, they know how to use all their PPE properly, and the learning can continue from there. So really great program that we've initiated. Yeah, so course hours, about 2,600 hours, staff hours that have gone into courses, over 4,200 hours in core training. So that's your regular Monday and Wednesday nights, for about 6,800 hours, staff hours of training within that 1 year. So we've really been training hard over the last couple of years, and that's pretty evident in our performance and how many hours that we've been putting in. Touch on a few of the highlights here. So capital projects wise, obviously the fire hall was completed, which was amazing to see. So phase 2 was complete. SCBA, so self-contained breathing apparatus, the compressor and the fill station was replaced. So that's how we fill all of our air packs. That was replaced and working very well. Highlight was the Town of Coaldale and Lethbridge County Fire and Rescue Services Agreement, which was re-signed in April of 2021. That is a 3-year term. A really nice thing about that was the inclusion of fire inspections and fire investigations in Lethbridge County, something we've talked to them about for years. It's really nice to see that now in play. So just starting in April, just a quick snapshot of what we've been able to invoice out to Lethbridge County, just over $17,000 in services that we've been doing for fire inspections and fire investigations. The fire underwriters, so there was a regrading completed by the fire underwriters services, so they kind of look at your municipality, fire departments, water supply, all that kind of stuff, and give your community a grade, for which then insurance companies look at that grade for commercial and residential lines, and they kind of use the number to decide what your premiums are for fire insurance. So we got a better grade. We had an increase of 1 last year once they did the audit. So commercial, and that's on the commercial line. So potentially could see insurance savings for local business thanks to our improved fire insurance grading. And I will point out one major part where we got a significant amount of marks was for the ladder truck, which we didn't have before. Staffing, so we had an intern position, which we rolled into a fire training officer. So Parker is in that spot. It's been working out really well. Like I said, our training is, top notch with these 2 guys working on it. So very happy with how that is going. Kate Andrews' work experience. So we have a volunteer right now. He's in his 2nd year of the Fire Academy program. He's coming 2 days a week for a couple hours at a time. And that's strictly volunteer at this point. Just an update on some of the programs that past council has approved of. So we have the firefighter fitness program. Last year we had 10 users at a cost of about $5,250 for that. Our mental health program, we spent $1,300 on that last year, which was a significant decrease from 2020. We spent over $7,000 on that. So really great to see that program continuing to be used. extremely important to take care of our volunteer firefighters' mental health, especially over the last couple of years, how difficult it has been and challenging to work through this pandemic. So that's been good that it's still being utilized. We saw our fire academy first official graduation in June at the fire hall, and now we're into our third year of the fire academy, and we're doing medical first responder again, which is a program through NATE. So that's going right now. And one last thing, just under a program, something that could be coming down the pipe, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to come to council to speak to it at some point, is enhancements to our firefighter health and wellness program, which would look to implement a voluntary annual medical evaluation with an emphasis on cancer screening. So this was a project that I worked on during school, which I'm looking to implement within the department. I've had discussions with Campbell Clinic already here in Coaldale. Each and every physician there is on board and wants to see it go and wants to do anything they can to support our volunteer firefighters. So obviously we've had losses in our department due to cancer. Firefighters are at a higher rate of certain types of cancer, so I feel we need to do whatever we can to improve the health and wellness of our volunteers. So yeah, I'd be happy to come do a presentation on that at a later date. Looking ahead, 2022, so fire department master plan, which council approved during the budget process. I'm starting to pick away at the RFP currently and hoping to get that out soon. Records management system. So we are currently using, it's called FDM. It's a software. We kind of got lumped in with the city of Lethbridge several years ago when Lethbridge County wanted to go to a records management system. FDM is no longer being supported, so we need to find an alternative for that. We're currently looking at a few different vendors. We were approached with what the city was going to as their new platform, but the cost was a little bit too high. So Coaldale and the other regional departments in Lethbridge County are pursuing some other options right now. And my hope would be that this all-encompassing software can amalgamate a few other programs that we're currently using, ideally in a cost-neutral situation. So there's no new money being asked for now, and hopefully there's not, but we'll see when that comes. Spring recruitment, we'll be having a meeting about that this week and be getting a recruitment started here in March to get a few more volunteers on board. We would like to look at the fire services bylaw, which is quite outdated here in the town of Coaldale, and start some discussions on a level of service policy for council to endorse. Training, so the Recruit Academy will be happening once we get some more applicants on board. We are going to be hosting a critical incident stress management training program for people that want to get trained to be a peer support member. So we're doing this with the town of Colehurst. They're going to be hosting one weekend, and then Coaldale is going to host the other weekend. So likely looking at May for that. We want to continue to build up our Lethbridge County Fire Inspection Program. We're still kind of working on building our list, figuring out what's all out in the county. There's not great documentation or records of all the businesses out there, so it's a bit of back-end work to get a hold of these businesses and get appointments set up. So hopefully we'll get more done. But I mean, we just started in April 2021, and we're doing pretty good so far. And one capital purchase for this year is a command truck. Hopefully to get the order in very soon, within the next couple weeks, as we know how the supply chain and logistics issues are worldwide, that we likely would not see a new pickup truck come until September, October, even if we ordered it now. So, and that is it from a fire service perspective. So I'm happy to take questions now, or we can get through everyone and do questions at the end. Ms. Mayor, it's up to you.
I'd like to open it up to the floor for questions as we go through each presenter. And I just have one question. Have you been in any discussions with Lethbridge County as far as expanding our response area?
Yeah, in response to Mayor Van Ryn, it is something we've been talking about. I don't have an answer right now. It's still kind of up in the air, but from what I gather, they still want Coaldale to take on the expanded territory. It's just what that looks like right now, I'm still unsure.
Okay, because when I met with the Reeve, there was appetite to have discussions on that. So I'm hoping that administration will follow up with theirs. And then my other question is regarding the code reds and the current state of our ambulance service in Southern Alberta, or not only Southern Alberta, all of Alberta. I'd just like to have you comment on what your feelings are about if Coaldale should start looking into going back to their own ambulance service.
Thank you for the question and the opportunity to comment on that. This is something that's been on my mind for a few years. I worked for Coaldale when we ran our own EMS service. It was gold standard of advanced life support care, and people wanted to come here to work. We had a very good ambulance service, and from what I've seen personally, the degradation of service over the last 10 years has come to a critical point. Just looking at the incident Saturday, February 19th, where we had no ambulance for 24 hours, I could not imagine us ever doing that. I have people asking me all the time if Coaldale is taking the ambulance back. I think we have the capacity to do it. We have the facilities to do it. We have a new hall with enough space to do it. I think it's definitely something that we should consider and maybe start that discussion. I know it can't go back to 2009 because we still have to have some sort of agreement to provide a contract service with AHS EMS, but I think it's definitely worth looking at.
So question for our CAO to move forward on something like this, what kind of direction from council do we need to give so that we can get some budgets on what it's going to cost and to do the whole program?
Great question, Mayor Van Ryn. I think a practical motion, if that's the desire of council, is to direct administration in conjunction with the Emergency Services Committee to do a high-level feasibility analysis of that question, as well as an analysis of the key stakeholders that should be engaged as part of that analysis. I think a motion along those lines would help get us the information needed to take that discussion to the next level.
Okay, thank you. And while Kevin is here, I just want to open it up to the rest of council on this topic because I think it's important. Again, our safety for our residents is paramount, and it's not working the way it is right now. So would anybody care to make a motion around the comment that our CAO just made? Councillor Saylor, you're willing to make that motion? So Kalen, can you just, you have time to play with it. We'll go on to our next presenter and then we'll bring it up at the end. So, okay, Kevin, who's next? Oh, sorry, I forgot. My apologies.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mayor, and through to Kevin, or Chief, I should say. Yesterday I was on Google Maps, and I was quite surprised because the old fire hall looked really tiny. So it was really quite I think it just shows an accomplishment that's worth the accolades for all the hard work that's gone into it. So carrying on, I just wanted to ask you about mental health first aid, and are you planning on kind of boosting that as kind of like a more of a requirement or like a priority item for your department? I know the reason I asked that question is because provincial departments, both in policing and I think even the RCMP now, are really mandating mental health and awareness, all those things that go with it, just so that you can even identify situations in a more relevant way, but not only for yourselves, but for the people you serve.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Thank you very much for the question. Mental health is a topic that's very near and dear to me. I take it very seriously. It is something that we are working on in our department, that we try to raise the awareness around it with our members. We discuss it during the orientation from the time the volunteers start. We educate them on our mental health program, the resources that we have available, and we try to increase their awareness through training and bringing the topic up quite frequently as well too. And again, if we do have a traumatic incident, those resources are pushed out again to the membership so they know that they are there. We've also sent several members to peer support training. So similar to the training that we're going to be hosting here in May. So we've built up our capacity on the peer support way. So the people that have the training there, they can recognize some of the signs and symptoms. They can be a person to talk to. They can lead group debriefings or one-on-one conversations with people if they're having issues. And that's good, but sometimes you need that professional help as well too. And that's where the psychologists come into play. And having access through our program to psychologists, I think, has been really great. We also have the EAP through the town of Coaldale that's available to all of our members. So it's definitely something we're going to continue to look at. I know at a federal level, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs is really pushing for more mental health training for firefighters as well too. There is a program, they used to call it R2MR, which is Road to Mental Readiness, which was in the Canadian Forces. They've now kind of tweaked it a little bit, and I believe they call it the Working Mind. Very similar program now. But we are always looking for more training opportunities and to really push that as a priority.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Chapman. Any other questions for Kevin before we move on? Okay, next.
Okay, so the first slide here looks at just our plans. So looking at our emergency management, what we went through last year. We did our typical annual review of our municipal emergency management plan that we go through annually. Just updating our contact information and stuff like that to make sure that we have the most appropriate contacts. We also did a major revision last year of our emergency social services plan. So anytime we do an evacuation and we have residents that are out of homes, stuff like that, we have to be able to take care of those residents until they're able to get back into their home. So we did a major revision on that, which actually led to a tabletop exercise that we just recently completed. And we also did a major revision of our stormwater operations plan, which is in conjunction with our operations team and our engineering and infrastructure team as well. On the next slide, another major thing that we had happen last year obviously was the new fire hall, but we had our new emergency operations center that we were able to get into, which I'm not sure if all you know, but the room over here used to be our old emergency operations center, so quite a bit of an upgrade for that, drastically increasing our functional space. Being able to increase our technology and stuff like that, and ultimately easier day-to-day operations with everything for us being in one building instead of running back and forth between multiple buildings. So having that EOC move over there was a good thing for 2021. On the next slide, another big component of our emergency management program is training. So we did a lot of training throughout 2021, not quite as much as we normally do accomplish, mostly because of COVID. But we were able to get quite a few people into the NATE Emergency Management Summit, which was virtual last year. So it made it a little bit easier to send multiple people to that, since they were able to do it from the comfort of their own desk. We completed a basic emergency management course for any new employees to make sure we meet our legislated requirements. We also hosted a few ICS 100s towards the end of last year as well, to make sure people were caught up in that aspect. Along with the revision of the Emergency Social Services Plan, we had a lot of emergency social services training, including new training on the RRCP, or the Registration Reception Center program, and the My Alberta Emergency Registration System, which now allows us to, instead of always having to do in-person registrations, is people can use that My Alberta Emergency Registrations or registration system to register on their mobile devices if we have an evacuation. We also did an incident command post refresher at the beginning of last year to sharpen up our skills for everybody that would be in that EOC operating. We also participate, we have a few staff that are on the Southern Alberta All Hazards Incident Management Team, which I think we're currently at 3 staff right now. 2 of us have fully gone through all that training, and 1 staff member is done her block 1, but is working on that, the rest of that training to be fully a part of that team. But one thing that team allows for us as well is a lot of increased practice, increased exercises with some of our partners throughout the region to ensure we're ready to respond to an event. And that was kind of our 2021.
Thank you, Clayton. Any questions? Okay, I appreciate the update. And Mark?
2021 for Coaldale District Municipal Enforcement was a rebuilding year. And I wanted to thank Deputy Chief Rutberg for the fabulous way that he turned over the unit to me. It sure made stepping into the role much easier. There was a lot of great foundation work done, and the community engagement that started before I took over the role of manager has led the way for how we're developing the unit today. So 2021 was really a rebuilding year. In May, I took over the role of manager of community policing, and we immediately hired somebody to start working in our photo enforcement unit to keep that aspect of traffic safety moving forward. June, we hired 2 gentlemen to become CPO1s to take over the role of bylaw enforcement and peace officer functions within the town of Coaldale. We hired 2 really good fellows for the roles, both with ties to the community and both having completed their training to become community peace officers in October 2021, have dived right into the role and embraced their new functions and roles within the town. Our structure of our organization, we have Chief Kevin McEwen, who's in charge of Coaldale District Emergency Services, myself as manager of the unit, Julie Garbett, who is our Emergency Services Coordinator, Devin Nielsen and Scott Elford are your current CPO1s, and we have 1 CPO2, Alan Nilsson, who's looking after automated traffic enforcement as a casual photo radar operator for us. Last year in 2021, it was actually quite a busy year because we didn't really have anybody except me until the end of October. And in that time, we did over 300 calls in addition to the other functions of the roles last year. The slide that I'm showing you right now is cases by area, and our call load actually breaks down fairly evenly right across the town. There's not one particular place in town that stands out as having a huge increase in responses or in events. So our town is fairly evenly spaced for our calls. Again, the largest portion of our activities last year were on unsightly properties, at 28%. It was the biggest single area that we worked on. I won't go into every one of those little ones, but that was the big one. Community standards, dogs came in fairly high as well, dog control enforcement. Our number one enforcement, other than automated traffic enforcement last year, was parking, which actually surprised me. I was surprised how many parking complaints we actually get in the town of Coaldale. So it's something we're going to look at this year to find out if there's anything we can do to decrease that call volume and reduce the number of times we have to do that, or make it more proactive on our part. Dogs at large, 12.5%. And I have to say thank you to Lethbridge Animal Services. They were excellent in responding to our calls for service last year. We had a very good working relationship with them, and it has proved to be to our benefit to work with them instead of trying to look after those calls ourselves. Along with that, last year, late 2020, early 2021, we elected to discontinue the use of the dog pound that we had here. The primary reason was because of the condition of the dog pound. It was in terrible condition. I wouldn't put a pet in there. And the second reason is we just don't have the manpower to look after it or to maintain adequate control over it. So that unit has been repurposed into service area for the town shop. And dogs that are taken into Lethbridge Animal do not cost us any extra money for them to house them because they've been picked up in the town of Coaldale. So there's no cost to us that way for it. A new facility would be astronomically expensive. Having looked at what Raymond did for their new dog facility there, it was just, for the amount of dog complaints we actually have, it's not cost effective for us at this time. Officer generated reports are those reports that officers create themselves, so it's things that they've initiated as opposed to things that are coming in as complaints from the community. And our number one thing there is actually community relations. So places where our officers have gone out and interacted with the community in some capacity on whether it's educational, whether it's informative, or whether it's attending a community function, anything like that. So we actually spent a fair amount of time last year. The things that the officers did themselves, they were actually responding more to things that they perceived on their own as opposed to being called out to other complaints. Again, as with anything, the paperwork takes the most amount of time. After an event, about 92% of the time spent on a call is actually writing the reports afterwards. We're looking at ways to improve that, looking at our records management system to find out what's the most efficient and effective way to improve that and reduce the time wasted on paperwork. And we're pursuing that from investigative report writing and amalgamating different systems that we have so that we can make it more efficient. Automated traffic enforcement is always a big component of our unit, and we participate with the RCMP in a traffic safety plan for the town of Coaldale, which is being rewritten as we speak for 2022 and 2023. The ultimate goal is to reduce collisions, to improve traffic safety, and to create a better environment in our community for the citizens of Coaldale. Automated traffic enforcement has been a huge part of that, especially in the last 2 years when we didn't have any CPO1s to do any kind of enforcement on their own, and with the challenges that the RCMP have had with staffing and keeping enough people on the streets during COVID-19. We have our traffic safety plan incorporates a number of initiatives that are starting now and started actually in the fall with our Candy Cane Check Stop program and with our school resource program with our officers going into the schools now to do presentations and to increase traffic awareness and other community awareness initiatives in our school systems. Part of our safety plan as well is we have been participating with our town planner, who's now since left us, but in the traffic calming project and actively working towards doing analysis on different sites around town to see if we can affect positive change before we need to get to an enforcement action. So last year in automated enforcement, we monitored 139,642 cars passing through the town of Coaldale or driving within Coaldale. Of those vehicles, 8,241 were speeding at a rate of speed where we would charge them. Our guidelines are if you're in a school or playground zone, or just playground zones now, 10 kilometers an hour or higher will result in you receiving a speeding violation ticket. And on Highway 3 or 845, our 50 kilometer zones and highway zones, if you're traveling at 15 kilometers an hour or higher, you will receive a violation notice. So of those, there was 8,241. 5,000 of them, 5,500 were people from Alberta, and another 507 were from outside of Alberta. What's interesting is that the breakdown for us is 75% of the people who receive a photo enforcement ticket from Coaldale do not reside in Coaldale. Only 25% of our offenses are actually Coaldale residents. So it's a great deal of migratory traffic traveling through town. Enforcement highlights, I won't go down to each one of them all in all, but needless to say, Highway 3 is our highest volume location for offenses. It's also by far the highest volume roadway we have going through town. Highway 845 coming through town, we have multiple complaints of speeding violations through on that section of roadway. Very difficult at present to enforce with photo enforcement. We did initiate one plan, which we discussed at the previous council meeting, where we reestablished the playground zone in the 2100 block by the John Davidson School. We will see enforcement there after the 1 month warning period, if you will. My CPOs have been going out. They started as soon as they were back from training. They started enforcing using conventional enforcement on 20th Street, and we've seen a number of offenses there, and also a number of positive interactions with the people who live on 20th Street, responding to their complaints and speaking with them personally about their issues and trying to address them themselves through enforcement. Mandatory court tickets. Our mandatory court tickets are tickets which are exceptionally high speed, so 51 kilometers an hour or higher. You'll notice like the highest one we had was somebody doing 131 kilometers an hour. They were over the speed limit by 61. Speeding is still an issue here, and we'll still continue to address it. Now that we have the addition of the CPOs, we are putting a plan in place for 2022 to address it, not just with automated traffic enforcement, but also with conventional enforcement, and working with our signs department to rotate some additional awareness signs to different areas to just increase everybody's awareness that not only is it being enforced, but what the speed limits are. Our next one was for playground zones. I was really happy to see that actually our average speed over the entire year in all of our playground zones was less than 30 kilometers an hour, which is great. And our average speeding offense is about 40.1 kilometers an hour, so 40 kilometers an hour. That's actually very good. And we do not have a huge number of speeders in the playground zones, but that's because we go out there regularly. Revenues from photo radar is always the monkey on everybody's back. And it's been pushed to us by the Solicitor General's office that automated traffic enforcement cannot and will not be used for the purposes of revenue generation. But what I've always said is that photo radar by its very nature is intended to be used in high volume locations. And if it's in high volume locations, it's going to generate revenue. And so we need to recognize what it is and where it goes. And that's the direction the province has taken now, that we now have to publish how much revenue is generated from photo radar or automated enforcement and what we do with those funds. Last year, our gross revenues from automated enforcement was just shy of $1 million. And it sounds like a horrendous amount, but the government of Alberta takes almost 60% right off the top on that, between the victim fine surcharge and their portion of the fine revenues. Of that 986, they took $542,000 off the top. Then when you take out what are anticipated uncollectibles, so about 20% you can anticipate will never get paid. And after 2 years, the province will not seek any redress to recover those funds. So after 2 years, if you haven't paid for your photo radar tickets, you go to get another license plate at that point, the government will not try and collect that funds anymore. So they're considered uncollectible. So by the time we took all of that, our projected revenues from photo enforcement are $394,000. So it's sounds like a heck of a lot when you just send it out there. So the reporting process that we're putting in place to comply with the Solicitor General's requirements under the Automated Traffic Enforcement Guidelines for 2022 is we will be disclosing on our quarterly reports and annual reports the breakdown from total to what the town of Coaldale would actually see, and then from there how the town of Coaldale uses the funds that were raised from automated enforcement. And to that event, I'm working with Kyle and Ashley in finance to prepare a way to track any funds that the town allocates to traffic safety and improvements on our road systems within the town to show that we are making an active effort to make the streets of Coaldale a safer place to be. Just a quick note on understanding fine revenues. I won't go through all of this spaghetti salad that you're looking at here under understanding fine revenues. But today, if I issue a ticket today, it could be 2 to 3 years before that ticket ever has to be paid. And there is no way for us to audit what I issue today to find out if it ever got paid. It's an absolutely ludicrous system, and there's no checks or balance for us to know. You can look at this later, but it really is a minefield. I now have 2 tickets going to court in February 2023 that I issued in November 2020, and they haven't gone to court yet. So I can tell you now, when I go to court in 2023, they'll throw them out because they didn't get to court soon enough. I already know that. The new system that's coming into play, and it was supposed to start on February 1, did not start on February 1 because there was enough public outcry about the new system under Safe Roads announced by Alberta Transportation that the Solicitor General's Department put the brakes on, and they have stopped release of the Safe Roads program for up to 120 days. It's now projected to launch again on June 1st. We are prepared to launch. If they call tomorrow, we can launch tomorrow and be ready to go. All of our prep work is done. But under the new system, it certainly shortens the process quite a bit because you should have a decision within 30 days of issuance of your notice of administrative penalty of whether or not it's going to be paid or not. And the province has committed to supplying us the information back on what happens on an individual notice of administrative penalty, so we will be able to track that in our own RMS system to find out what happens so that we can actually do some proper projections. I'm working with our software supplier now to also incorporate the field issue tickets into that information so we can track that just as efficiently as we do automated traffic enforcement. Our focus highlights from last year really were unsightly properties. 1511 21 Avenue, everybody may have remembered that property. Anybody who's been seen me out there, it was a house right on the corner of 15th Avenue 15th Street and 21st Avenue. And it had been abandoned for many years. The homeowner is still around. I've spoken with his family. We could never contact the homeowner. Squatters had moved into it. Alberta Health Services condemned it. We suspect that it was set on fire, but we were unable to confirm whether it was an arson or not. That house has now been torn down and the lot returned to ready for sale condition. And it is going on the tax arrears list as of the end of March, hopefully to be auctioned off later this year so that the town can recover the costs. That property's now clean and ready to go. The second one, and I got introduced as the guy who got rid of the egg farm I don't know how many times this year, and I have to say that I personally did not get rid of the egg farm. The egg farm, we had multiple complaints. From the time I started, I think I had 5 complaints in the first 3 months about pieces of the buildings flying off and going to the neighborhood. So I took it upon myself to issue a Municipal Government Act order on the property. I met with the CAO for the company that owns the property. We reviewed it all. They did make some immediate repairs, which were greatly appreciated, and ultimately they decided it was, I guess, better to tear it down than to leave it like that. So as much as I'd like to take the credit, I have to pass it off to the owners for doing what was really the best for the town of Coaldale and greatly reduced our call load. Camping in vacant lots was another highlight for last year. We had a number of storage lots here where people were living in RVs inside the lots. It took some doing, but we were able to get rid of the people who were living there illegally and work with the owners of the properties to make sure that doesn't reoccur. RCMP were quite helpful in that regard because the people who were living there were people that, as bylaws officers, we wouldn't want to be dealing with on a one-on-one basis. And so thanks to the RCMP for supporting us in that effort. Again, the other big highlight for us was undeveloped lots in 2021, and I know this goes on every year, where we have developers who are sitting on undeveloped lots, but they don't look after them. And the vast majority of our time is spent chasing developers who don't look after their lots. I will be speaking with our planning department and our land use folks this year to see if we can, when we send out notifications early in the year, tell them exactly what it's going to cost if we have to go in and clean them up for them. The issue that we had last year was we would give them a notice, then we'd have to go back and give a second notice to say we're coming on. Then we'd have to keep following up on that and do notices, constant notices all summer long, every 2 weeks when the sites would get out of hand. So we need to get that under control, and it's a priority for us this year. Actually, we had a couple of neighbor disputes going on this year that were quite time consuming. One was on 24th Avenue. I won't go into the specifics on it, but we ended up working in conjunction with the landlord who owned the property, and we were able to have the residents relocated. The landlord just decided it was no longer worth his effort to keep having phone calls from us about noise complaints and threat complaints and RCMP involvement. That property has since been sold and purchased by an owner-occupant. Again, we have an ongoing complaint about a business on 24th Avenue, different side of it. It goes back to a rather large garage that was built there. We are working with the community residents now, and we're looking at some changes on our business bylaw and also our traffic safety bylaw that should address those issues this year. And the big things for us this year in community policing initiatives has been our school resource officer program has been relaunched. And in cooperation with the RCMP, our CPO1, Devin Nielsen, is leading up the SRO program. And he's coordinating it and working with the RCMP and bringing them in where necessary to add their input. It's going very well. He's been out to every one of our schools already this year, late last year and early this year. And we're getting some great feedback, and he has a number of more school resource input projects going on for this year already. Our second program was our Candy Cane Check Stop program, which Scott Elford, our other CPO, initiated. And he's building partnerships with Lethbridge Police, MAD, AMA, and Tabor, and also the RCMP locally to do a number of more Candy Cane Check Stop programs focusing on different issues throughout the year. So we hope by the time it's all finished, he should be having 4 or 5 of those a year here in Coaldale. Again, I mentioned earlier our traffic calming and the traffic analyzer program that we're partnering with our planning department and land use department on addressing issues of speed within the town, and that's an ongoing project. And we have now added a traffic service request program to our town website, where if people have a concern regarding traffic safety, they can actually go on, take the time to fill out a request online, and then it gets input into our system where we can then do an initial analysis within bylaw to determine whether or not it's something that should go to traffic calming program or whether it should go straight out to an enforcement action so that we can do an assessment or review it more efficiently. Quickly, the studies that we've done already so far this year are on Cottonwood Drive, 24th Street, 16th Avenue, 10th Street in the Eastview Park area, Highway 3, 2300 20th Street, and the Parkside community. And we've conducted 1-month studies in each of those locations already this year, or last year, pardon me. And our traffic calming committee will certainly report back on the results of all of those. Major financial expenditures for us in 2021 were recruit hiring and training and equipping without any second guessing. That was our biggest expense last year. The second biggest has been the Safe Roads conversion, which is taking all of our ticket systems out of provincial court systems and transferring them over to Alberta Transportation. It's part of the Justice Transformation Initiative, which we have spoken about on previous meetings with Council. It's still ongoing, and as I said, June 1st is now the anticipated launch date, and we're ready to go for that. We incurred a fairly large legal review of how we do Municipal Government Act orders last year. And that was entirely to do with the house at 21st Avenue. Because we were going into that so in-depth, and actually we're going all the way forward with, or anticipated going forward with a demolition on the property without any input from the owner, it was prudent to have our town lawyers review the process, and in so doing, they reviewed the entire Municipal Government Act process for us. So now, should we be in the same position again, we can use the same format, and we know that we're court-ready at the time, so that we don't have to pay those costs again. The other thing with it being specific to 1511 21 Avenue, we anticipate recovering those legal costs when the house is auctioned off. It's a legitimate cost recovery item. For 2021, we upgraded all of our CPO vehicles for e-ticketing, or for Safe Roads project. Again, the Safe Roads ATE processing software was purchased. We do not actually pay for that one until we launch. So we have the software. We're still doing upgrades and development with our provider, but we won't be paying for that until we actually start using the system live. I did have 2 of our older CPO vehicles disposed of. We don't need them anymore, so there was no sense having them sitting here in fleet. One vehicle, the Dodge SUV. It was a Dodge, I can't remember what it's actually called. We sold that one to Ridge Regional, and in return they traded in a set of Haney wheel load scales for us, which our fellows are going to be trained on here very shortly in order to do heavy vehicle enforcement within the town and on our gravel roads or asphalt roads here in town where we have heavy vehicles. They'll actually be able to check weights and measures on those vehicles once they're trained. And we were able to acquire those as a trade-in value on the Durango, the Dodge Durango that we sold to Ridge Regional. They didn't want their scales anymore. Again, we spent a fair amount of money on upgrading into the new fire hall and getting ready to be the host location for file retention for the town. And our photo radar supplier upgraded our photo radar system at no cost to us, bringing it up to the latest version and the latest antenna systems, and making sure that we're available to go forward without having any costs to the town as far as upgrades go. So our things for now, the only question we have is whether or not we're going to launch with Phase 2 on Safe Roads on June 1st. I've spoken with the Solicitor General's office, with Rob Palzer, who is the lead on the Justice Transformation Initiative. June 1 is the anticipated date. They keep telling us we'll be ready to go on June 1, but they cannot confirm it until Cabinet actually puts the seal on that process. And we were originally told February 1 would never be changed, and it was changed 2 days before. So the only unexpected for us would be that our current processing system under the provincial government court system expires on June the 30th. If we go past June the 30th, we'll have to come up with another solution for processing under the current system, which the system we're using now is called COPS. The company is no longer interested in supporting it because they didn't get the contract from any of their people in Alberta for the Safe Road system. Everybody who was using them actually went to a company called MRF that we did. And so we may, if it goes past June 30th, there may be an additional $6,000 in programming required in order to keep processing offense notices under the court system now. I won't know that until we get closer to the date, though. Excuse me, I went too far. I was asked about annual recertifications. We've entered into a mutual operating understanding with the City of Taber Police Service. And as part of our MOU with them, they will be supplying our annual recertification programs at cost basis. So if there's any materials required for the course, we would reimburse them for the course, but there's no actual other course costs. So an example of that would be if they have to go annually and be recertified to use pepper spray, we'd have to pay for the inert gas canisters at $25 a piece to have them do the training, but there would be no cost for the instruction. A number of our other courses, we've have an agreement with Lethbridge Police Service now where we're doing shared training, and we are working towards an MOU with Lethbridge Police now, and our guys are doing training every other week with Lethbridge for 4 hours, usually on a Wednesday or a Friday afternoon, to upgrade their skills so that they'll be trained to the same level as Lethbridge Police. And that is it for Coaldale District Municipal Enforcement, and I'd welcome questions from anyone if you have some.
Well, that was a great report, Mark. Thank you for that. I just have one question before I open it up to the floor. Where are we at with Jake breaks?
Jake breaks. I've just completed rewriting our traffic safety bylaw, which will be presented to council on the 14th of March. Terry May has the sample sign in hand to go to Alberta Transportation with. He is going to be asking Alberta Transportation if we can move the signage further south so that we're at that outside limit of the 400 meters. In the traffic safety bylaw, I will be proposing an increase in the fine for it to $500 for using a jake brake within the town limits. And other than that, everything is in place to go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of council for Mark? Councillor Chapman.
First of all, thank you again for all your hard work here in presenting tonight's information to us. Obviously, we probably have a lot more questions. It would take a lot more time tonight, but I think just getting down to the nitty-gritty, the changes from the school to playground zone, you've had no complaints about the changes there at all? It's been working out well?
No, I haven't. I've had 3 people actually speak to me about it. They all love the idea.
Good.
That's the only people that have directly contacted me regarding it. We are not finished changing all the signs yet. I spoke with Terry yesterday, and on Friday, and they anticipate having them all finished by a week today. The weather events of last week and the cold slowed them down a bit on that.
Okay. My second question or recommendation, I guess it is, the mayor and I were at Access Coaldale. It's kind of like a subcommittee that Melanie Messier is spearheading about making Coaldale much more accessible. And so the concern from the working committee, there were some concerns about branches and trailer hitches and such protruding over sidewalks. And the mayor also mentioned electric cords and stuff like that. Like, is that something you can look into and do a monitor check all around Coaldale, make sure that branches or I guess hedges and trees are not sticking out over sidewalks? That was a real concern from the committee. Just somebody riding their scooter, whatever, could get a branch in the eye, that sort of a thing. So it's a safety thing, and I totally support that. If you could look into it, and also a recommendation that that you make a presentation sometime to the next working committee of the Access Coaldale.
I'd be happy to do that. And to that end, as part of the traffic safety bylaw rewrite, we've reviewed all of those points that you just brought up, including encroaching branches, sightline obstructions, temporary signs, and all of the number of changes are being proposed in the traffic safety bylaw that I'll be bringing on March the 14th to provide us the ability to enforce those under not just the traffic safety bylaw, but under our land use bylaw and under the community standards bylaw, where there was a number of overlapping things that conflicted with each other, and this will allow us a more efficient way to enforce those and to gain compliance.
Okay, thank you. further to your breakdown of all your activity, are you posting any of those in Sunny South News or anything like that?
They will be. I will not post the traffic safety bylaw until council's had a chance to review it first. And then we'll have council direct me, I'll ask council to direct me at that point, how they would like the community engagement done, but community engagement will be a large part of that.
Good, and because I think that's, especially if you do some highlights, it offers attention to that the work that you're doing, and the fact that most of your work is initiated by you guys. It's not like it's a reactionary issue. You're actually taking the front line there. Informing the public of informing on public radio of where your photo radar locations are?
We don't get the chance because we get called in beforehand. We release to the media every month a list of all the sites and the days at which each site is highlighted. So that goes out every month. Our operations coordinator looks after that for us, and it is released. Whether or not they broadcast it on the radio or not, I don't have any idea, other than I do hear it on the radio stations when I'm out in the vehicle myself.
Okay. And my final one is, you talked about undeveloped lots. I've heard concerns from people complaining about developers who are not cleaning up. So there's a lot of blowing waste around, and especially out in the industrial park with all the construction that's going on, it's blowing east towards 8th Street, and so the farmer across the road gets we hear it from him.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beekman.
Through to Mark. In regards to the photo radar locations with it being released to the media, is there any way we could, or maybe there is, then I don't know about it, but a website dedicated to where we would be able to find the photo radar locations?
We actually have a website, or it's on our Town of Coaldale website. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it's posted there every month. And also along with that, our statistic reports are posted there and a number of other items. And under the new bylaws, or under the new guidelines from the province, our quarterly reports will have to be published and put onto that website as well, so they can see where we've been, what we've written, everything.
Excellent. That's good for the people listening at home. Then they know where to find it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. Please pass on our appreciation to your staff members on behalf of Town Council. And Kevin, if you want to stick around for a minute, we're just going to do these motions here. So the first motion that we're going to need a sponsor for, I'll have our CAO read it out, please.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. I did complete my homework assignment here. So here is a draft, and council, feel free to edit as you see fit. But just to get the conversation started, that council direct administration in conjunction with the Emergency Services Committee to conduct a high-level feasibility analysis of a Coaldale-operated emergency service model, along with a detailed analysis of key stakeholders to be engaged in the broader process, in order to position council to have a more robust discussion about ambulance services in Coaldale, as well as alternatives to the current service model delivered by AHS.
That was pretty good. So I'll open up the floor for discussion on the motion. Okay, Councillor Saylor is going to make the motion. Any further discussion on it? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Yes, Chief.
Sorry to jump in there. Just thinking, CAO, that it should be clarified that it's Alberta Health Services EMS. That AHS EMS is not exactly AHS itself. It's a different branch of.
Councillor Saylor, will you accept a friendly amendment? Yes. Thank you. Okay, and then the last motion I need is for someone that council received the 2021 Emergency Services Department year-end report as information. Councillor Beekman, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Sorry for keeping you so long. Okay, so going to need a motion to go into closed session at 8:50 PM regarding item 13.1, subject to FOIP Section 16, third-party business interest, Section 17, third-party personal privacy, and Section 23 and 24, intergovernment relations. Councillor Reese, would you take that motion? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you to the viewers at home.